Councilmember Thorson?
Here.
Councilmember Peterson? Here. Councilmember Wong?
Here.
Councilmember Cole?
Here.
Mayor Furlong?
Here, quorum is present. This time, a motion to adopt the agenda. So moved, Your Honor. By Councilmember Peterson,
Second.
second by Councilmember Cole. Any discussion? Not all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. Okay, we have a pretty big agenda here, so I'm gonna turn it right over to Brian, and we'll keep the ball rolling. Looks like the first one is the ordinance pertaining to gambling. Do we need the city attorney here for that, or is this? Why don't we go ahead and, what's that?
Shanna is the one that put it together. I thought she was going to be going over that, so.
And I think we should have the city attorney here for, if we talk gambling and. So why don't we go ahead, we'll kind of pass on that one for right now, and then we'll go to park rental rates and policy review.
Yes, please, Carrie's been putting a lot of time and effort into this, and she'll be covering that this evening.
So Mayor and Council, what we have in your packet tonight, as we've talked, for several months, we've had some issues with our park rentals. We've made a lot of process and policy changes over the last year as we moved our rentals online. So I did a rental rate study, which you can see in your packet. I went about 20 miles around North St. Paul and compared other cities' rental rates and what they charge for their facilities and what they charge for deposits, just to kind of give you an idea of what's happening in our neighboring cities. As part of that, I kind of took a look at what all their park rental policies were and how they kind of compared to ours. There were some interesting things that I think might be good for us to consider, but I think it was really interesting. My intention was to kind of maybe color code it, like say these are comparable to our open air shelters, and this is comparable to Housy, this is comparable to Casey, but that's very difficult to do because every city has such unique assets that they have in their parks. But as you can see in there, a lot of cities charge quite a bit more even for the open air shelters than we do, and charge significant deposits for use of those facilities. So I wanted to get that information to you so you could just kind of, have some things to think over. The other thing that I noticed in that study is our rentals are from 7 a.m. to 11 p.m. A lot of cities only do 3-4 hour blocks. Half-day blocks have different rates for, full days on the weekend. So whenever possible, I tried to include like what their capacity limits were so you could kind of get an understanding on how those might mesh with our facilities. But that's really just some information for you to kind of take a look at as you advise staff on what you think we would want to do. The other piece in there for you is just some background information on our new Civic Rec program. We transitioned to that very, very quickly, end of November last year, because we had to be up for that December 1st resident date that we'd promised our residents for our park reservations. When I put this in the packet, we had 300 reservations. I pulled the data this afternoon, and we're already at 348 reservations. So you can see the popularity of our parks. We're full. Casey is booked almost every weekend and every day well into October, and we're starting to get some reservations into December. It's kind of hard. It's kind of an interesting year to maybe compare some of our park reservations because of COVID. We did have some cancellations. So far, we've done $40,850 in park reservations that have come in through Civic Clerk. Due to some of the refunds we've had, because we had a very flexible refund policy during the pandemic. So if you take our refunds out, we did just under $38,000 has come in revenue since November 30th of that year. The other really interesting thing I found when I looked at our park data was right now we have 863 user accounts in our system. Of those 863 accounts, only 320 are residents. So we have 543 non-resident accounts in our systems. So I think those numbers are interesting, skewed to see kind of what a magnet North St. Paul has been, because our park facilities are priced very affordably and are easy to get to online. I was a little bit shocked at that number, frankly. I expected a little higher resident rate than that. So some of the things we've talked about in the past is, do we go back to some kind of a deposit? If we do, what is that deposit? Other issues we have are tied to, we kind of have a wedding rate, but it's really awkward for people because they're not going to pay the extra money for a wedding. They're going to try to get a regular reservation. And so there are some issues there. We have some documents in City Hall that say we have a different rate if alcohol is served, but it's not in our fee schedule. How do we manage that? How do we enforce that? Those are some of the issues we have as well. So there's lots of things we have available to us in our tools that technology can help us. But we're really, as staff, kind of bringing this information to you as council to see what other information you would like or what direction you have for us.
I think part of it would be kind of bring that data to the Park and Rec Commission and have them take a look at it and have them make kind of a recommendation to the council. But I think the biggest thing that we're dealing with right now is that deposit, the deposit being taken away. And we've had quite a bit of damage. I don't know how much damage we've had, but we've had many issues down there now.
I'll have Brian speak to that. I'm more involved in what happens at City Hall and what happens on the website. Brian and the Public Works people have a more better feel for what's happening actually in the facilities.
But I think the rates and all that, I don't know if the council agrees or disagrees, but maybe have the Park and Rec take a look at that, because we have all those things that you did say in regards to the time schedule and all that. We did look at that a couple of years ago, and that might be a good idea for them to look at it again, for certain blocks. A morning rental, an afternoon rental, sometimes that may not work because of cleaning. I don't know. But I don't know if we bring that back to the Park and Rec and have them look at that. Councilmember Thorson?
Yeah, I think I was on when we discussed the reason for getting rid of that deposit. It seemed like at the time, at least, we weren't having these issues, and that there seemed to be, if people were putting their deposit on a credit card, we would get charged the fee, and just maintaining records of if someone reserves a park in January and puts a deposit down in January and then their event is in August. Just so that was the recommendation, that being is that there was never issues and it just was more of a burden to finance to kind of track and maintain these deposits, especially when there are different rates for residents and non-residents.
I think that's one thing that, sorry to interrupt, but this is one of the advances we have with our technology tool. Our refunds are really easy. They print out a receipt, Brian signs off on them, they go over to Jackie, the checks are cut. From what I understand from staff is that some of the issues they had with previous software, it was quite cumbersome and very difficult for them. This tool can give us very detailed reports, and we can pull that financial data out of there. So that concern, there's still the concern if somebody puts a deposit that they're going to sit on it for months, but that's kind of what.
Yeah, that's what I was
But
going to say.
the refund process is way.
Yeah, that was prior to us getting this new software, so that's what I was going to finish saying. We probably don't have those issues, but I get the Maplewood mailer. I think a lot of people do. They just include all of North St. Paul. And in their last one, they had the same issue. They're reminding residents to clean up after yourselves, and they had pictures on there showing it's garbage and trash left behind. It's just people being irresponsible. But I had asked what our current park rental policy had stated, and you had emailed. I'm just going to read it quick because it's just 2 paragraphs. This is, again, in our current rental policy. So everyone who rents the park either needs to acknowledge they've read this and signed off or initialed it or whatever. So Set up, clean up damage. The renter is required to set up, take down all tables, chairs, personal equipment. The renter is responsible for cleaning the kitchen and all areas utilized, including wiping off the tables and chairs, sweeping, taking care of spills, spot mopping floors, placing garbage and recyclables in appropriate bins, and removing all decorations, personal equipment, and the like. The facility is expected to be left in the same condition the renter found it in. The renter will be held responsible and billed for any unnecessary cleanup, losses, or damages, as well as be subject to loss of rental privileges. The City of North St. Paul is not responsible for any equipment or other items left in park facilities at any time. Place all trash and recyclable receptacles near the main entrance. So, we currently have this in our policy. It's just not being enforced. It seems to be the issue, and I understand that's difficult because if someone rents, let's say Casey Park, leaves, 5 or 6 hours of trash cleanup at Public Works, police get involved after the fact. Is it the police responsibility to follow up? Is it Public Works? Is it someone internally here at staff? I mean, these are just new issues that we haven't had to deal with. And they're issues that are happening in other cities and other parks too. It's not just Casey Park here in North St. Paul. So, I'm not opposed to bringing back a security deposit, especially now that that previous issue seems to be resolved. That certainly acts as a deterrent, I think, if it's a simple hold on your card for $300, $400, $500 and you get it back, assuming that these are all followed, I think is enough of a incentive for people to behave responsibly for those that don't. But if not, what happens if someone cancels their card or writes a check and
Well,
it's a bad check
The city
and things like
captures
that?
the funds right away in this new tool, so that's not really the issue for us. The money comes through right away. The other thing that would happen in a way that might help staff, and this was really evident to me when I took a look at the data today, there's a lot of people trying to just randomly grab a North St. Paul address that's not really theirs to get the resident rate. So if we put the deposit and the checks mailed back to the address, that will help staff to, it's amazing the way people will try to put their addresses through to get that rate.
Yeah.
And our system's smart enough to kind of pick up most of them, but there's a few that will sneak through.
So that would just be my concern, is that we don't put the rental deposit at a level that discourages people from utilizing it, or, it just seems like you can make rules and stuff and people just figure out ways around it. But I guess my main concern is that, this, I'm assuming we're not gonna change and that this will stay. I think we need to focus on what steps do we need to take to make sure that moving forward, this is followed, and if someone does do damage and cause hours of cleanup, that there's follow-up, that whoever's responsible is submitting it here to staff and City Hall, and that gets forwarded to whoever was basically on the rental policy. And I think it might make sense too to basically put a disclaimer that if you do leave the park in a damaged state, that you're no longer eligible to rent the facility for, depending on the severity,
Yeah, in our tool, we
Lifetime.
can flag accounts so that they can't rent from us again. And Brian and I have kind of discussed too, what we can do as staff and what kind of workflow we might have when there's issues. Because again, different parts of the city get notified when there's an issue in the park. And what's our internal workflow to make sure that we know to flag that account and we know what the additional charges are, so we can actually enforce what our policy says. So the other piece of information that I put in there is I kind of redlined our current park policy, because a lot of it doesn't really apply anymore now that we've moved to an online tool and people aren't, coming in with paper forms in City Hall. So that's another piece that I kind of put in there for a quick look over for you.
So again, I think it's, looking at policy and looking at, the rates and all that, I think that should go, possibly back to the Park and Rec to review, but that deposit, and I think is what we really should focus on right now in regards to, and I agree with the Councilmember Thorson, I think having a deposit on there really puts a reminder on them when they go to leave that night, oh, shoot, I got a deposit, we better clean up here. This is, it's something that triggers you to think that, you know, there is something there that potentially we could lose some money if we don't put it back to normal or if we did damage. And it sounds like there has been damage done there, done to the walls. And, you know, if it's putting on stuff that tears the, you know, the
Sheetrock off.
the sheetrock or whatever, I think that's what's been kind of happening, is that it's not just the cleanup part, it's more of damaging that's been going on down there. Councilmember Wong. I wanted everyone to, I was going to say Peterson and Wong and then Cole, but I want everyone to kind of chime in.
Thank you. Yeah, I think that, thank you, Carrie, for putting this work together. Yeah, I think, you know, certainly a security deposit is one thing to investigate. I'm also curious on how much, you know, since our rental rates are, you know, very affordable comparatively to the other cities, how much of that is allocated to, you know, re-upping and remodeling the space. And I don't really think of rentals so much as if they get damaged, it's more of when. So how much of that's being tied into that rental rate, and then, you know, how much time is Public Works doing to clean it up and such. So
Our residents, we've had residents out at Casey with brooms and dustpans cleaning up after rentals.
yeah, I believe that. But yeah, just thinking about that as another way to think of a financial incentive. And then in a preventative sense, you know, does our system, our electronic technology system, allow for maybe a brief module, maybe a more accessible way of learning about the policies? Because sometimes if it's on paper.
Just click the box, yeah.
Right, so is there, you know, a way we can educate the public for, you know, our policies to be a little bit more clear to them, so they know what the consequences may be? Thank you.
Councilmember Peterson?
No, I agree with the mayor. I think it's time, you know, with these deposits, when we have the technology, we don't want to burden staff, but it's important to keep that building, or all our buildings, in, you know, pristine condition. But
Councilmember,
I would refer to the Park and Rec on those other policies.
Councilmember Cole?
This actually was on conversation topic of last month's Park and Rec meeting. And it's the Park and Rec's desire to go back to a deposit-based program based on the activities that we've seen. So Carrie, thank you for putting all this together. I think we put it in the Park and Rec packet for next Wednesday night for them to take a look at, give some guidance and direction back to council for them to make a motion on, for us to move forward with. 2 years ago, when this same topic came up, there was a desire for Park and Rec wanted to actually raise their rental rates, recognizing that we were lower than a lot of the surrounding areas, and we offered a definite rental opportunity. And at that point in time, council said they didn't want to raise rates to residents or the rental of the property. So with that said, based on the fact that we've seen inflation, we've seen rising prices, we've seen salaries increase, we've seen a lot of other things, my assumption is, looking at the same P&L today, it would not look like it did 2 years ago. My assumption is cleaning fees have gone up, you know, utilities for the property have gone up. So I don't know who or how we would take a look at that, but it will be my guidance to the Park and Rec Commission that we take a strong look at what our operating costs are on this, and that if they have gone up, that we do take a look at raising our rental rates as well.
So kind of what I'm hearing is that we should move this to the Park and Rec Commission. And I think the deposit side, we could also move over there, because most of the rentals that are being done right now they're already rented out to the end of the year. So we're probably looking at, you know, these people who, the new rentals are probably going to start after the first of the year, because I assume that a lot of them have already been done for the
Right
year.
now, the system is blocked, so people can't rent past December 31st. And then the residents will get, so like we historically, North St. Paul has given residents first right at dates. And so I have it programmed in the back end so people can't rent any further out until we open up the new calendar year on December 1st.
So this policy probably would start January 1st then, moving forward. So we do have. a
Or
little-
December 1st when the resident rentals start for 2022.
So, yeah, December 1st. Okay.
So
So we have enough time to put that in place before December 1st.
we, as staff, will work to get some more financials for you on what some of those costs are, and then I will just clone this content into the Park and Rec packet for next week.
Thank you.
Council okay with pushing it to Park and Rec and get a recommendation? Okay,
Thanks, Tim.
move on to the next. We still don't have a city attorney. The CIP.
Thank you, Mayor. Engineer Morgan Dolly is here to discuss the preliminary discussion and review of the CIP infrastructure projects.
Welcome, Morgan.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. Good to see you all again in person. Let me just share a screen here for anyone watching the sidewalls and/or on Zoom. Basically, just for maybe background, kind of broad brushstrokes here for those on the council that maybe have not been through the process before. And I have just met our new finance director, Dan Winnick, and I can assure you that we are working very tightly in concert on this, but there is certainly several steps to follow what we're about to kind of review and overview at this meeting. There's some financial analysis involved. There's potential bonding discussions. So that's all to happen afterwards, and certainly these discussions can carry through your ongoing budgeting discussions as well here as well. What staff wanted to do at this point, and with the previous finance director, together with Public Works and myself, our intent was always to bring this at a workshop here mid-July, review kind of preliminary ideas, not hard recommendations from staff, but just a general potential approach. Some of that is carryover from previous staff. Some of it is new with respect to things that Public Works is looking at, and also some things that we're hearing from other agencies like Ramsey County. But basically, this is intended to be a somewhat comprehensive look at more streets and utilities. And I probably should have clarified in the staff memo that when I say CIP, looking at the city's website, really what this is in reference to is the street reconstruction plan, or SRP, and that's the reference that the city has given what we're about to review here. So in terms of where might future projects be, what kind of projects are those going to be, what is the general level of recapitalization in terms of, reconstructing or rehabilitating that aging infrastructure. So this is simply a starting point, and more on streets and utilities than an overall capital improvement plan, which might include things like purchasing vehicles, plow trucks, all sorts of things, not just street and utility reconstruction. So just to clarify that, what I'll do is I'm going to provide just a quick explanation of what the 4 attachments are in your packet. And then I'll move into just a general discussion on each one of some things, some high points I think that staff is seeing, to bring them to your attention. And there's an opportunity for council reaction, certainly ask questions, any questions that you have. But also staff would be looking for a little bit of direction in terms of how we might refine this and revise this, maybe reorder things, for example, to align with your expectations. And then again, with the finance department, there can be some further discussions about, how would some of these things be funded? What might be, the city's bonding strategy or borrowing strategy with which to fund some of these improvements, that sort of thing. Again, folding in with future budget discussions that you all will be having moving forward. So this is just one small part of a big process, certainly. The last time that this was updated was early in 2020, and at that time, a very short, concise version of a street reconstruction plan was adopted, so 2000 to 2024. What we're working on here would be proposed to generally replace that and bring it out to either 2028 or 2029, so approximately a 6 to 7 year timeframe. And again, these plans, whether it's a capital improvement plan or a street reconstruction plan, they're not etched in stone tablets. They're always meant to be a guide. Different things can drive things to higher priority, such as if we have water main breaks, several in 1 year on one street, which has happened before in North St. Paul, that might drive a project to the top of the list that maybe was pushed out a little bit further originally. So what feedback you give here, or what direction that you give staff at this point, or even ongoing points throughout the process, even through to final adoption of a street reconstruction plan or capital improvement plan, there is some flexibility within the constraints of funding ability or financing ability. But again, this is not necessarily meant to be a hard stop and not to be revisited. So that's fairly common practice. As far as the attachments, what's on your screen right now, or what you can see, is the first attachment. So this is a general map that we'll go through that provides depiction of areas that, since the city has kind of embarked on its more modern aging infrastructure improvement program, which began in 2014 from a construction standpoint, but was adopted originally back in 2012, 2013. It shows what we've done so far, and then what are some future areas to move into potentially, again, based on council feedback. This next,
Say, Mark, can you
yes.
put that back real quick?
sure.
So you got maintenance overlays. I don't see a whole lot of that.
I'll get into that. Yep.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep, no problem. That is definitely a part of the approach that we're proposing, which is consistent with past approach as well, too. I think it's not been documented before as well as we're doing right now, so it'll provide a little more guidance for the public in terms of what streets the city might do and when, and also helps provide some guidance for Public Works as well, too, in terms of attacking that from a maintenance standpoint on an annual basis, given annual budgetary allowances that have been included in the budget, and we're assuming that at some level that will continue on moving forward. The second attachment is simply, this was taken straight out of the current street reconstruction plan. You can see I kind of struck through and made some annotations there as possibilities here to push some of the projects that are currently included out into the future. Again, that was done upon review by city staff and looking at other potential areas, but that doesn't have to be how we do this. I should note that this particular sheet was prepared with costs with 2020 dollars, and any of these cost estimates are reflective of total project costs, so all in, including some level of contingency, both indirect and hard construction costs. But there is no inflation, right? So if there is financial
So things are cheaper
analysis,
now.
yeah, right, right. Yeah, whichever way the markets go, it'll be important to, again, ongoing financial analysis to be able to make sure that we understand that these sheets that we're looking at now are 2020 dollars because they were prepared last year. Some of the estimates that we'll be looking at on the next sheet, those are 2021 dollars. These are, again, all very high level. There's not been any sort of very detailed measurements or design or understanding of very specific kind of unique issues that might be on one project versus another project, but they are based off of going rates and recent bids, both in North St. Paul and other similar communities for like type of work, to give us mostly just a budgeting tool, so we know generally about how much some of these projects are going to cost, so we can plan for them with a little bit of contingency, knowing we don't want to underplan, but it's very possible that total final costs might be slightly under or might be slightly over, depending on different factors, and that's, again, common past practice, very similar in terms of what we've done here in North St. Paul. When we get to this level, this is very high level length by width by approximately per square foot cost of the type of project. These things get refined and we get a very much more exact cost when we get into a specific project, usually either the year before or maybe the in preparatory for the construction season through that winter, that's when we would be preparing more detailed estimates for the benefit of city council to consider and for potential bidding out if it's a public bidding process. And this last map here, which is very similar to the first, there have been questions, past questions by the city council in terms of, well, how are our streets, or where are they good and where are they bad? So this is a snapshot in time in 2019. That was the last year that we did a regular ongoing update of our street rating process that has been in place since about 2012. There's a slight pause there for budgetary constraints. It's certainly something that can be picked back up at any point, and we do, within the computer model that I use to maintain this, we can always just, we don't have to re-inspect things exactly every single year. We can predict, it's a guess, but we can use a pavement deterioration model to try to update this year over year. That's not as accurate because, as we've seen in other areas of the city, some streets deteriorate faster than others based on subsurface soils, other things, the type of original construction. So it's not always the oldest street that is in the worst condition, right? But generally, we don't need to run through this in high detail. But again, to answer any questions the council might want to have in terms of where are the worst streets, in a somewhat qualitative method in terms of rating between a 0 and 100 and 4 different categories, excellent, good, fair, poor, which tend to drive the type of improvement that you're going to make on the road. This will give you a general sense. And mostly many of the newer roads that have been addressed either by maintenance overlay or full reconstruction are indicated here in blue, which is very minimal maintenance is required and fairly new roads, with red being kind of the worst state of the road. But again, many conditions go into determining what's the right fix and what's the right time to make the fix. It's not as simple as just going to all the red. When it gets to red, we reconstruct it. There's a lot more to it, as some of you may know, having gone through the process before. So briefly, and I should ask, Mr. Mayor, how much time would you say I've got to wrap this item up, knowing that there's other items on the agenda?
15 minutes?
Fine, no problem. Going back to the first one here, so let me talk about other agencies' activities and how they drive what might potentially be things that the city would need to look at. So at the very top of the map in purple, you can see kind of an arrow pointing off into the middle of nowhere, and that's, it looks a little mysterious, but as many of you know, we do own and operate and maintain part of our drinking water distribution system north into Maplewood. So there is a portion of our water main. Now, they're not our city streets, they're Maplewood city streets, but it is our water main that goes north into Maplewood. And this particular line is drawn on McKnight Road, which is a Ramsey County road. So in our annual check-in meetings with Ramsey County engineering staff, that's myself and Public Works, and we share notes about, well, what do you guys have coming up? What's in your draft capital improvement plan? They're going through the same process that many cities are as well, too. They shared with us that they're planning on overlaying McKnight Road, and their initial thought was to do it next year in 2022. We do have some concerns with the age of the water main under McKnight Road. Their overlay project is going to be from Beam Avenue all the way north to County Road D, which is basically right before you get to 694. It's not a main trunk line, but it is a line that if they were to overlay that road and cover it up with a fairly significant investment in new pavement, we certainly would not want to deal with having a water main break, and the water main has lived its life through that area. And I think we do have some water main, we have got some history of water main breaks in that section as well, too. So again, outside agency and their improvements might drive some other things that we would consider doing either, as a joint partnership effort, whether it's under their contract or whether it's a contract that we would let and just coordinate with them from a timing standpoint, that we'd get in and out and then they would do their stuff on the road. There's a lot of flexibility there. There's no wrong way to do it. But what we ask them is, hey, we need time to evaluate the water main, turn the valves, do some leak testing, make sure we know exactly what we're getting into. So we asked them to push that back to 2023, which they agreed to. There's no driving force behind them doing it next year in 2022. But if they're going to do their work in 2023, then at least from a planning standpoint, right, capital planning standpoint, it makes sense to plan for that, either to start working on the design or the bidding documents in late 2022 or early 2023, and then plan for that improvement again to be coordinated with their work. In the past, they've been really good to work with in terms of Ramsey County, I'm saying, in terms of trying to coordinate things, and so I don't anticipate any major problems with that, but that's why that is included in here, and again, driven by an outside agency. Another example of that is on the far left of your page on Ariel Street. So Ariel Street, which is highlighted in blue along with a couple other streets in the area there. Ariel Street is owned jointly 50-50 by the city of Maplewood. That street has been identified as in need of repair. In consulting with the Maplewood City Engineer, Director of Public Works, their evaluation kind of matched my evaluation that it's a candidate for a full-depth reclamation, which is similar to, in recent years, what you've seen on Helen Street North and also past the high school on 11th and 12th Avenue not too long ago. So not a full reconstruction, but certainly enough to actually get through the old deteriorated pavement and replace that.
Are you talking the blue part?
The
or
dark blue, yes. So I don't know if you can see my pointer, but that's this area right here. So now the cost of working on the street would be borne 50-50. Again, ownership between North St. Paul and Maplewood is kind of right down the line, and so not uncommon, and we've done this with Maplewood before on Beam Avenue and other projects, that whether they lead the project as the contracting agency and we enter into an agreement where we pay them, or we lead the project and they pay us, it's fairly simply handled. Now, based on council feedback that we get here tonight, ongoing conversations with them is that they would like to do it sooner rather than later. They're willing to push things off a little bit if we want to, but they certainly don't want to let it go too long. And what they had said to me, again, these are just staff conversations, nothing's locked in, but they might lead the project unless there are other streets that we might want to include at the same time, or if we had water main issues that we would need to attend to, similar to the conversation on McKnight Road. And we do have a section of water main under, I believe, south of 11th Avenue is kind of the area of concern. We think we might be able to leave the water main in place north of 11th Avenue. But we do have some issues on that southern segment of the blue aerial line. And then also Public Works had identified some of those other dark blue highlighted areas, 14th Avenue, 13th Avenue, Flanders. Those are all areas that were identified for some version of a maintenance overlay. And the thought of Public Works and myself was that if in fact the council was okay and we were able to meet an agreement with Maplewood, that we were able to kind of be the contracting agency again, having them fund their fair share of the improvements, that we might include those adjacent streets all at the same time and try to address those in one project to get them all out of the way. We wouldn't do anything more than we normally would with a maintenance overlay project, but we might get better prices on paving, for example, just trying to leverage economies of scale, having everything put together in one package. So I might just pause on that to see if council has any thoughts or reaction in terms of staff conversations with Maplewood. You know, are we interested in doing that? Or because it came out of nowhere, right? We were planning on presenting to you some other things, not necessarily this, but they brought it to us. It could happen in 2022, in which case we might want to think about getting started on it soon. Or 2023 might be another project, but then, you know, we're also looking at other projects to discuss for 2023 as well, too. So it's important to think about the phasing and approach so that we don't have too many projects overlapping each other in terms of capital investment checks going out the door. And I think, again, subject to some financial analysis about what's feasible and what's not from a finance standpoint. But Does council have any feedback in terms of working with Maplewood on Ariel Street in some fashion? We don't have to do these other things, but certainly the water main is recommended to take care of if anything is done on Ariel at all. And Maplewood does want to see their half of the road improved, and they're not just going to do half a road. We need to do the whole thing.
Well, it seems to me if you can do it jointly with a, neighboring municipality, it sounds like it makes more sense to work together than to have them do half the road and leave the other half, or
Right.
whatever they do. And then also, if you can piggyback off that project to help the other streets around that area, that does make sense. But I'll open it up to the council.
Yeah, any feedback? My next step
Councilmember
would.
Wong?
Yeah, go ahead.
Thank you, Morgan. I have questions in regards to Ariel. So I do think a joint project is a good idea, and just wondering what all entails in terms of road improvement, and especially how it relates to the redevelopment master plan, or those types of living streets plans and stuff, like, for example, sidewalks.
Sure, that's an excellent question. So the redevelopment master plan is focused on downtown, so Ariel wouldn't really fold into that. And typically what we would do is if we did embark on some preliminary investigation as to the feasibility of the improvement, we'd take a look at the comp plan, Living Streets Plan, for example, and see what types of things that were indicated in there. For example, if there's a recommendation for adding sidewalks, we would bring that to council, and that's happened in the past. The council can make the decision, yes, we want to move forward with whatever, adding sidewalks or bike lanes or whatever. Bike lanes are generally simple because striping is cheap, but it also affects on-street parking, which is sometimes an issue, right? And so those are kind of all the factors that would be placed in front of city council as we would potentially move forward with any project. These are just lines on a map, but kind of that order of progression would be a since we've gotten rid of our assessment policy, we don't have to do a formal special assessment process, but we would still, and I think the city attorney commented on this when we rescinded that policy, is that there would still be a preliminary engineering memo that might speak to some of those things. Like, these are the plans that actually has information which inform what might the potential improvements be, or if it's silent on it, then, it might not come into play. But that's typically the stage at which we would approach those things. At this point, we don't have any information on that, so it's very high level.
Councilmember Peterson?
Yeah, I use Ariel a lot, and I think they did some improvement, because I haven't lost any teeth.
Public Works has been doing a good job of keeping it patched, yeah.
And I think it's smart to incorporate those other streets if it's,
Councilmember Thorson?
Yeah, I think, this is, in my opinion, should be our main core focus, is constantly looking at this and making revisions as needed. I recall the open house we had back in 2019 when it was the Chisholm, Masabi, Buell, Gerald area. At that time, we still did street assessments, and if I recall, the overwhelming response was very positive, and that people were, anxious to wanting to know when is this going to start, and that seems to be the case for a lot of these projects. People recognize that a lot of our roads, as you can see on that map, it's pretty red, the PCI rating in all sorts of areas. I mean, we're making progress. It's just not financially feasible to do half the city at a time. So we're taking it bit by bit, and we've made modifications based off of development. We're making modifications based off of county and other neighboring cities' projects. So I just want to make sure that we continue to move forward with this, whether it changes or not, that we still get projects done on a year-to-year basis.
Councilmember Cole?
I'm all in favor of doing something joint with Maplewood. I like Candy Drive. Spent a whole lot of time on Ariel, and it's yeah, she's a bumpy road. A couple of questions though concerning Flanders, for example. You talked about doing an overlay on Flanders. I don't believe there's curb and gutter on there as well. So is that something we would take a look at the same time?
We could, yeah, we.
Straight
We could, so some of so maintenance overlay is kind of a bit of a catch-all term, which originally was brought into the vocabulary when we still did have special assessments. So we wanted to identify a type of improvement that was truly maintenance and less invasive. But it still applies now here today where there's potentially not a lot of need for engineering. These are projects that are generally intended that Public Works can go out for quotes with, a Shifsky's or whoever, and make some improvements that are maybe not 25 or 50-year fixes, but certainly can add some life to the road and provide a more pleasant rideability experience for the people that live there, some curb appeal as well, too. So we've never in North St. Paul had some sort of standard by which when we add curb and gutter, unless there are known issues and deficiencies from a drainage standpoint, because curb and gutter is the primary function is to collect the water and get it into our storm sewer rather than using ditches, right? Adding curb and gutter from scratch just from a general overlay standpoint, that's a little bit tricky to just kind of do it on the fly. You can do it with a contractor, but generally it's good to have a little bit of engineering and guidance in terms of line and grade and where the water is going to flow. So I wouldn't rule it out, and if the city council and or Public Works or if we hear from the residents, for example, that that's something that we really need, it could certainly be added, but it winds up taking a little bit more effort on the front end. So I wouldn't preclude it. That said, it's certainly able to be overlaid, and that might mean you mill through all of the pavement and then you're overlaying the gravel, not just leaving that bottom layer. Sometimes we do that too if we can get away with it. But we would be able to do that without adding curb and gutter, at least as far as I know now, not knowing of any specific drainage issues or concerns on the edges of the road. So that could be. And I would say that in a general sense, if you add curb and gutter, that's going to add life to your roads. If we were going to reconstruct Flanders, we probably would add it. But that's a much more intensive, invasive effort that it just makes sense to do at that time. If we're trying to get another 5, 10, 15 years out of the road before we have to come back and start patching potholes, well, then that might not be the right time.
'Cause I know that Flanders isn't the only street in North St. Paul that doesn't have curb or gutter, but it happened to jump out at me, and I thought I would ask.
Sure.
My other comment ties in with Councilmember Wong. Wholeheartedly agree that I think as we look forward at doing street projects, we really truly should look at sidewalks as well, from a walkability standpoint, from what we're hearing from the residents, and use and just how life has changed over the last couple of years. I think it's a definite asset as we move forward.
Understood.
Councilmember Peterson.
Isn't sidewalks gonna be always now? I don't think they were just gonna be automatic.
Not that
I'm not going to say you made it up, but so staff has not gotten that direction before. Now, if what would be automatic is if there's, and this has always been the case, if there are existing sidewalks and we were reconstructing the road, we would reconstruct the sidewalks. If there's existing sidewalks and we're maybe overlaying the road or doing something in there, that would be the time to maybe fix some cracked panels, or if we have some heaved panels or trip hazards, we take care of that at that time. Certainly upgrade, if we have some ped ramps, get those up to ADA standards. That's the time that we've committed to do that within our ADA transition plan. But that's a policy decision for the city council. They can certainly move that direction. There have been lots of spirited discussions in this city about sidewalks in years past, and so, but again, also thoughts and desires in terms of sidewalk as a amenity and a multimodal kind of transportation facility, that changes over time too. And it can change neighborhood to neighborhood. So I get that, I understand that, and I think that we can certainly, and the comp plan, in terms of the effort within the, I think it was the pedestrian and bicycle chapter within the comprehensive plan, was intended at that time to supplant the Living Streets Plan, which through several discussions in past projects was identified by city council to have maybe a few flaws and shortcomings as a plan. It certainly can be used as a guiding document still. That document wasn't unadopted. But the comprehensive plan in terms of sidewalk approach and interconnectability, that was something that the Planning Commission and City Council worked pretty heavily on. And so that would probably be staff's primary reference in terms of should we have a sidewalk, or at least is it identified within an adopted planning document to add a sidewalk on Ariel Street or whatever. Does that answer your question? Okay.
Do you have enough information from us to?
Yeah,
I think we're,
for Ariel, I guess just specifically, is it okay that I continue conversations with Maplewood potentially for a project in 2022 rather than push that off to 2023? You know, to be determined and decided by the council finally, ultimately, certainly, but.
Councilmember Wong?
Yeah, can I clarify one thing? So in terms of the water main breaks, is that something, and maybe this is more of a question for our new finance director, is the American Rescue Plan able to cover such costs? My understanding is that they can cover some water infrastructure.
Yep.
And is that the reason why we see, you know, Chisholm, Buell, Gerald, Mesabi pushed back 5 years?
I'll take the second question first. That's not why the area north of Casey Lake was pushed off. That was, in terms of previous staff's thought, is that we could still get some life out of those streets, and then I haven't gotten to them yet, but there's some other potential priorities in the downtown area that would slide in front of those. And so that was the movement in terms of the Casey Lake areas. As far as recovery dollars are concerned, yes, so sewer, water, storm sewer, and broadband are kind of the categories that have been talked about most recently. That's certainly more of a finance thing than an engineering thing, but in terms of applicability for those funds as they're received by the city, absolutely, you know, it could be on any one of these projects as long as they fit within the category and the time frame that's identified when you need to spend the dollars.
Thank you.
So I think you have enough unless you want more.
I guess I would just point out that, like you alluded to it, Councilmember Wong, in terms of the pushing out of Casey Lake, and we don't need to spend a lot of time on this, but what we've identified here in terms of what might happen downtown is that gap between the, it's not called Uptown Commons anymore, the Margaret and 7th Avenue project.
The Sentinel?
Sentinel Building? Sentinel Building, okay. So the Sentinel Building project, which improved parts of 7th Avenue and Margaret, and then what is being completed here in 2021 to wrap up the work in 2020 to the west, which is highlighted in blue, and that's areas of 7th Avenue and 2nd Street primarily. So there's that gap in between the two. So the idea here, subject to consideration and future approval certainly, is to attack that in 2023. And then in I think it was 2023. Yes, that's what I've got. These are just placeholders that can be moved around. And then skipping a year, then the next project after that would be in red. That's the rest of 7th Avenue up to a certain point, maybe not all the way to Century, because we know that when the interchange comes, there'll probably be some work at that intersection that we want to stay out of. That is something that would be potentially in 2025. Now, what the previous finance director had told me is that if we go back to these sheets here, some of the general overall funding identified for 2022 and 2024, now we're kind of off kilter with our even years and odd years, but generally what he had said was that if we stay within the confines of these approximate project costs, so 5.7 million, and, oh, it's on the next sheet here. I think it was 4.9 or, yeah, 4.9. So somewhere in that 4.9 to 5.7 million dollar range for our next couple large projects. So that could be downtown, but just from a, you know, budget standpoint, he thought that might be okay. Again, subject to further review. But what we have identified now on this list where there's costs identified, all of those areas, again, previously identified by staff that just lines on a map, we know now that that's probably more scope, then like we would be getting out above that 4.9 to 5.7 million dollar range. So I've highlighted on here, we don't need to go through all of these, but there are some kind of logical breaks in terms of the color coding here about things that could be separated out. For example, we don't really need to reconstruct all the alleys with a project. You know, those are things that have been added on in the past, but if we need to be more cost conscious, maybe alleys can be handled later or as a maintenance maintenance overlay or something separate. Margaret Street on the 2025 version, the red one we were looking at, we wouldn't necessarily need to do 7th Avenue and Margaret Street. That could maybe be broken into 2 projects. And that would definitely get us within that kind of budget number of 4.9 to 5 million. So staff can certainly noodle on that some more for you all, maybe for the next time that you look at this, if that is,
I was going to say,
Okay.
if we can, that's the other piece of the puzzle here, is your job, Dan, and that would kind of give us an idea how much scope we can do in regards to each year and how that, you know, because we do have some, our bonding, I think that's coming off the,
Sure.
off the tax roll or whatever, that we might be able to do more at that time. So I think, yes, if sooner than later, we should probably put that on and take a look at, you know, what you've got here and kind
we
of
will
over.
definitely do that. And I will note also that within Minnesota, where we only have so many months in a year to construct things, there's some point at which there's too much, right? And so I'm comfortable with that $5-ish million level. And so Dan and I can certainly work with Public Works a little more on this. And next time you see it, it might go out a little bit further, or we might have some more logical breaks, but
Right.
I think it'd be
Right.
much more informed at that point, so.
Okay, I hate to cut you
No,
off, but
it's
I
all
think
right.
we need to move ahead here. So the next, I think, Brian, do you know if the gambling, is that something we need to take action right away, or is that just a topic for discussion? Because I think we can table that and move that to the next meeting.
Yeah, there's not going to be an attorney available for that discussion this evening.
Okay, I
so
think
we can table
we'll
it.
table that discussion, because we won't have an attorney here, and let's save it for the next, either next one or the next one after that. Just,
Sure.
if that makes sense to the council. Okay, so we need discussion on hiring the city manager. Would you want to discuss?
Yeah.
Kind of awkward.
No. Staff is looking for direction from council on the path that you want to take in posting for the position. So you can do it in-house, and we could post, say, in League of Minnesota Cities and see what is available out there that way. Or we can post through a firm, but just to let you know, you'll be budgeting probably 20 to 30,000 for that, to do that through a firm. But that's what's in front of you this evening. Staff is looking for your direction.
So I think we, in the past, and we've been through this before, and I think we've done it both ways. Talking to the city attorney, he feels, you know, it'd be nice if he was here with the workshop, but talking to him, he felt outside agency might be good, because the staffing here just doesn't have enough time to, you know, go out and look. But you know, the other option is to go to the League of Minnesota Cities, and possibly internally that, you know, someone might be available. And I had talked to Craig Waldron, and he would help with that process and be able to maybe put together a committee in regards to sending it out to the League of Minnesota Cities. I think that gives you kind of who's available within the area, who's in, I believe, someone from another city or what have you. You know, the scope of it is a lot smaller than if we were to go to an outside agency. I think that allows you to go to a broader area than just going to the League of Minnesota Cities. But that's not necessarily 100% true, because I know people look at leagues of other cities, other states, you know, when they're looking for jobs. So, but the outside agency does give us the opportunity. I think they narrow down based on kind of what what our criteria is for our city. We kind of give them, what we're kind of looking for. It kind of breaks it down and gives them the responsibility to bring in maybe the top 10 candidates, maybe the top 5 candidates, where the League of Minnesota Cities, I don't think does that. There'd be more of I think we might get 50 applicants. I think that happened one time before when we went to the league, and then we had a committee that went through all those applicants and narrowed it down to the top 10 or top 5 or what have you. So I guess I'll open it up to the council in regards to how you feel we want to move ahead and looking at hiring the city manager. Councilmember Thorson.
Yeah, I would strongly recommend that we would engage with the outside professional company and just do an RFP. I know Baker Tilly is the organization that Oakdale used to hire their city administrator. I believe it was back in October. I think that cost was $23,000 some odd dollars. But that's what.
So you mentioned Baker Tilly. So there are many outside agencies. Do you want to, I know some cities will interview agencies, or do we just go under the recommendation from the city attorney? And because I think Baker Tilly was one of them, that's kind of the local, who a lot of people, or a lot of cities use, but there are quite a few different agencies out there, and I know cities will interview that. So that's something we want to keep in mind, that there are other ones out there, but Baker Tilly to me is, I think that's who we used in the past, or a lot of cities use them. So, Councilmember Peterson.
Yeah, I do agree with Councilmember Thorson. I know it's 20, 30,000, but we could get a bigger scope, get a real good solid man.
But we've gone through it before, and we,
This has been, keeps me up at night, yeah. But, I would be in accordance with agreement with that.
Councilmember Wong.
Yeah, I would ask, what is our agreement with the firm? Is it to, securely, find 5 candidates? Like, what are the details of that arrangement? But overall, I would be leaning towards the firm, given the job market we are in and the great resignation. I do believe that we may have a difficult time finding very qualified candidates if we don't expand our search. And to, I'm not familiar with Baker Tilly or any of these firms, but I would be open to an RFP as well.
Councilmember Cole.
I'm also in favor of going to an outside firm to help to expedite placement. I think it'll help from a speed standpoint as well as from a staff timing standpoint. Not exactly 100% sure how public sector works. Private sector, you don't have to hire just one from a search company. You can have search companies compete against each other for candidates to bring forward. So I don't know if we want to give exclusive opportunity to one, or if we open it up to a couple different search agencies to find the placement, but they may have different networking. But I don't have the experience here, so I would, look to others who do.
And I think having the city attorney here too, because he's gone through the process in a couple of his cities, and he kind of knows kind of that, the format in regards to how cities will do it, whether or not it's Baker Tilly or, somebody else. If we do an RFP, does that mean we're opening it up to other agencies, and then they will give us, their outlook or their recommendation and their bid process, I guess, is what, Brian, do you have any insight or?
In talking with Soren, he did say that will prolong the process by a good month by doing that. If you're going to open it up to have companies come in and give you a bid, and then, so you post it, so you have the firms, get together their quote, and then come back to council to make a decision if we'd like to do that. It's just going to prolong the hiring time to getting somebody in here. And he did say that most of these firms, they're pretty close across the board from what you're going to find when you advertise with one firm, but that is totally up to you.
With not having him in here, I guess maybe have more discussion at the council meeting and be able to ask him some of these questions, and he might be able to give us a recommendation of, you know, who's out there and who's kind of doing the cities right now in our area. No, if he was to make a recommendation for a agency. Because what comes, I think Baker Tilly is the one that they might be using, but I don't know if that's 100% accurate, so. But I agree. I mean, I think either way, I think we need to, you know, get the right person in here, whether it's through the outside agency or the League of Minnesota Cities, but it's going to be a cost to us, but I think that cost is beneficial to the amount of staff that we have right now. I just don't think we have that time to do that. And even with the outside agency, I think we'll have to have some sort of committee at the end, whatever that looks like.
Once they narrow it down, I think that'd be a good idea.
Everybody okay with that then? We'll ask the city attorney at the council meeting, and we'll make a decision at that time. Okay, so the big one I really want to get to is the police department, because we're going through a lot of things over there right now. And Brian, you can kind of update the council in regards to what's going on. And Ray, maybe you want to be just a point person in case Brian's got any questions or anything that we can ask you, so.
Thank you, Mayor, Council. Yes, our current situation is pretty fluid with the police department right now. I'd certainly like to start off by saying Ray's been doing a great job, and his department has really stepped up to cover the just the shifts to get a complete staffing of it and keeping everything safe. So we're in the process of hiring a chief right now. Once the chief is brought on board, we have 2 interim positions that will drop back down to the positions they were in. And at that point, on paper, we are fully staffed. However, we have actually 3 officers that are off right now due to injuries. So it's been a struggle to cover all these shifts and get the people on the streets that we need to have there. And it sounds like, unfortunately, that we might potentially be losing a couple of more to another job. So things are really tight right now. We've been looking around for different options. Right now, I guess as it's always been, if we do have a call out, especially if it's a major call out, we do get support from surrounding communities, but that's just for those situations. It's not being able to borrow an officer to help us out. So the fear is that we're, pushing burnout with some of these officers. The overtime for this year is, I believe, up now, so it's all been used. So we're really looking for some ways to get some people in here. I guess the bottom line would be is to ask if we could move forward with actually posting for a position without getting into HR issues. It sounds like might be able to do that even with on paper with full-time employees. We have currently only 1 CSO. CSOs are really able to help out, and I think Ray will be able to discuss that further to keep the officers on the streets for the calls and the call-outs. I wasn't originally going to ask for something from you guys tonight, but I think we need to seriously think about posting for an officer as well as a CSO. I think we're in a pretty tough situation right now, and I think these positions are going to need to be filled rather soon anyway. I think because of the process and the time it takes to get an officer on board, even a CSO, it's a good idea to post for that right now with that process. And also, we don't currently have a list to choose from of past officers that we could bring on board. We still have to go through that whole interview process. So there's a lot to do, and we just wanted to put that in front of you tonight. I think Ray would give you a lot of good information as well in covering the shifts and what they've had to do up to now. Ray?
Ray, if you could kind of just fill us in, what the dynamics down there right now of what's going on, and the overtime, and I know you've been working with finance, with overtime and all that, you know, a lot of that is part of the, you know, the equation in regards to hiring a new officer, you know,
Yep.
because of the overtime is so much.
Yeah, Brian, City Manager, hit it right on the button. Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, council members. We are going to exceed our budgeted overtime. And as of last weekend, we have another officer that will be out for an unknown amount of time. That officer is an overnight officer. In the last month, we've had officers work extensive amounts of overtime. This could lead to burnout. And it's not a matter of if it will lead to burnout, it's a matter of when. We lack the capability of having uniform frontline policing services. And our citizens of North St. Paul deserve frontline services across the board. And when you can't provide proactive policing, it's a matter of time before crime increases. It's a matter of these criminals are smart. They recognize when police squads are not out. They know our schedules. So our CSO and another officer, they're top candidates right now for job placement with other agency, and they'll probably be leaving our department middle of August, end of August. So potentially by the middle of August, we'll be down 5. That includes a CSO. Unless we make a change quickly, it could be more than 5 with burnout. As acting chief, I've had to step up myself and get a little bit out on the streets and respond to calls. That makes it difficult to manage from the inside and manage in the role that I'm supposed to be in. Acting chief requires you to do a lot of administrative work. And when that gets pushed aside, just the plate builds. I'm trying to do my best to keep our officers healthy, especially our supervisors. And if we don't have the supervision on the streets, we tinker with the possibility of, what could happen to officers that are not supervisors making wrong choices because they don't have supervisors out on the streets with them on critical incidents. We've had some major incidents that required supervision, and there's been times where I've had to come in to make sure that things are kosher and there's a supervisor on scene, and that's overtime. Typically, the chief position is a salary position, and because I'm not the full-time chief, that's an hourly position right now. So it's something to think about. We also have the acting sergeant, Sergeant Betts, who is been on vacation for a few weeks. He's had to come in. That's overtime. That's sergeant overtime. That's supervisor overtime. It's one thing to have overtime for our patrol, but when we have the acting chief and the supervisors coming in on overtime, it's a whole different set of numbers that you're tapping into. So please consider, like Brian said, the immediate need to post. There's, like I discussed in our last meeting, there's the traditional process and there's the lateral process, which is an expedited fast-track process. And we can have somebody, a candidate here, an officer in training and on the streets within a couple months. So as opposed to the traditional, and we can get that person filled in, get that person properly trained. Being that they're a lateral candidate, they're probably coming more than likely, they're coming because they're a lateral candidate, they're coming with experience. They're coming from another agency, they're coming already with experience in law enforcement, already working the streets. The field's tough right now. There's a lot of agencies hiring, a lot of good agencies hiring. But yeah, I urge you, council, to really consider and think about providing us with the extra staff that we so desperately need.
When is the new chief coming in? Do we have a date at all? I mean, you guys still got to do the evaluations, but when,
We're still doing the onboarding. We're hoping within the month.
within the
In a
month?
month.
Okay. I'll open up the council for discussion. Councilmember Peterson.
Public safety, in my mind, is number one, and we have to protect our residents. I don't have a problem with it, I don't know where we're gonna find the money, but it's important, we can't have burnout. I know you're doing a heck of a job, I appreciate it, I think all our officers are doing a heck of a job, but they're human beings, and they need their time off, and I wholeheartedly, we gotta get this done.
Councilmember Thorson.
Yeah, it's a no-brainer for me. It's no question. If that's what's recommended, that's what we do. You know, it just, I'm appreciative that we're getting a little heads up on this, because in the past, it's been kind of way after the fact. So I appreciate the forethought and looking down the road to seeing some of these issues and acknowledging that getting the process started now and potentially getting candidates to fill these potential spots that may not come back or leave. You know, it's good management, so thank you and for recommending that, and I fully support that.
Councilmember Wong.
Yeah, thank you for bringing this to our attention. I think, certainly public safety is important, and I especially like the idea of adding CSOs. It sounds like that has been really helpful in the past. Additionally, I think, if there's anything on the preventative side to help police officers too, I think that's, something I on council would be really open to, because it takes all sides, and we just really need to make sure that burnout and that constant response isn't too much for our officers. But yeah, I would be okay with that.
Councilmember Cole.
Yeah, my comments mirror that of council. We definitely need to Ray, make sure that your team is staffed. We owe it to the residents of the city. I am in full support of adding additional CSO officers over and above the one that we currently have. I think they're a true asset to everybody from a financial standpoint, from a time-saving standpoint, from keeping leadership on the street where it needs to be, and having them take care of other things that might not necessarily need a leadership role. From a lateral or an expedited move, it sounds like that's the direction that the city probably needs to search. Because I think it was shared that the traditional role could take, up to a year to have an officer on the street and ready to go. I think with burnout and everything that currently sits out there, we don't necessarily have that luxury of waiting a year. I guess the numbers that I've heard are we're looking for one and one additional, or are you looking for more? I mean, if we've got potentially 5 spots that could sit open, 2 isn't going to fill the gap.
Currently, our complement is, what did you say, 19.8?
Yeah, currently the complement's 19.8 FTEs. Again, with 2 out, now 3 actual police officers that are out.
Yep.
And then there's the potential that a police officer and a CSO may be leaving the city of North St. Paul. So, yeah, if we're going to be posting, we probably want to look for potentially 2 CSOs and at least 2 officers, if not 3.
And then I know there was also conversation around, is it officers from Ramsey County or from St. Paul that we may be able to call on to help backfill some of our void in the short term?
That was discussed, and I had spoken with the director of the Ramsey County Sheriff's Office, Leiden, and they're, because of what they're going through with the state fair, they want to hold off on any further discussion on that possibility. We did explore it, and it was brought to Sheriff Fletcher's attention. But they have their hands tied right now with what they've got going on, putting together the arrangements for the state fair. So as of right now, we don't know when that could be. That could be next month. It could be a year by the time they're all said and done with their arrangement for the state fair. So you're right that that was discussed and explored, but at this time it's being put aside.
Ray, and I might have asked you this before, Oakdale and Maplewood, are they kind of joint also? I mean, are you able to use some of their services possibility at all, or?
We have utilized Maplewood services, state's services, Ramsey County's services. They've so kindly taken it upon themselves to assist us on calls, more or less critical calls, than, if we're not requesting assistance. But if it's a high priority call, domestic assault, suspect barricaded, they're amped to join us and assist without us requesting them. Periodically, we do request their assistance, but in the last several months, Maplewood has extended their services to us extensively. I have reached out to the public safety director over there at Maplewood and extended our appreciation for their assistance over the last several months. And he was quite pleased to hear our thanks. So they've done a wonderful job coming over and helping us multiple times, especially at night. There's been times where we haven't had the supervision at night. I'm here during the day, and we do have a day sergeant here more than we do at night. So the supervision during the day is complemented more than it is at night.
So it sounds like the want right now is 2 officers and 1 CSO, because we need to figure out all those officers that have injuries, the officers that are on leave right now, I mean, and then get the new police chief in here. So I guess, what, is that kind of the bare, what you would, if we could give you the okay to, get the bare minimum going, and then wait for the new police chief to come in, and then see where we are with all the other officers?
The want would be 2 to 3 patrol and 1 to 2 CSOs. That's what we would hope for, to fulfill our staffing levels on both the day team and the night team, and to be able to provide 24/7 supervision.
So I think if we give you the okay for 2 officers and 1 CSO would be good until we figure out
Absolutely, Mayor.
the other side. Is the council okay with that?
My only comment is if we're just going to be replacing the 1 CSO that we currently have, so we're technically not gaining any additional support.
That's correct.
2 and 2?
I misunderstood then, because I thought that the question is for 1 additional CSO, despite if this one we currently have leaves, we're still at 2.
So we will have 2. So 2 and 1 right now. Yeah. Okay.
Thank you.
And that's city manager 2 and 1 on hiring, and then Ray, I wish we could do it, we get you the help tomorrow.
I know
I think
you
the
do, Mayor.
council would love to have you get that help, but I know there's a process and a time, but we definitely are hearing you and want to be able to help you, so,
We're all thankful and appreciative of all you.
okay. Okay. I think that's,
The final,
it. We did it
good job.
within our time frame. So I think we'll motion to adjourn unless there's anything else.
So moved. Or second, I mean.
Wow.
I'm gonna-
Moved by
All of the
Councilmember. Wow, we want to get in this.
Sorry.
Moved by Councilmember Peterson, second by Councilmember Wong. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Oppose, meeting adjourned, and we'll take, let's here. I'd like to call the City of North St. Paul City Council meeting in order. If we could all stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I'd like to welcome everybody. At this time, Jenny, if you take the roll.
Councilmember Thorson?
Here.
Councilmember Peterson? Here. Councilmember Wong?
Here.
Councilmember Cole?
Here.
Mayor Furlong?
Here, quorum is present. At this time, motion to adopt the agenda.
So moved, Your Honor.
Moved by Councilmember Peterson,
Second.
second by Councilmember Wong. Any discussion? Not all. Those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. We don't have any presentations that I'm aware of. No presentations. Next item is the consent agenda, and that is the 2021 workshop minutes, the 2021 regular meeting minutes, the 2021 HRA minutes, general claims of $1,590,461.99, HRA general claims of $191.34, the monthly building permit report for June of 2021, resolution to accept resignation of city manager and appoint interim city manager, resolution approving acceptance of donations received June of 2021, application for a temporary on-sale liquor license, and an application for charitable gambling for exempt permit for the Church of St. Peter, application for a temporary on-sale liquor license for the Church of St. Peter, cooperative agreement with Ramsey County, McKnight Road, and Anchor Drive cost participation, Rotary Park wayfinding signage, and declaration of equipment surplus. At this time, if a council member would like to pull any item, they can do so at this time. Anybody want to pull anything? If not, motion to approve the consent agenda.
So moved.
Moved by Councilmember Cole,
Second.
second by Councilmember Thorson. Any discussion? Not all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The motion carries. It's time the meeting open to the public, and the public at this time can talk. Are we on Zoom at all?
Yes, and no one has their hand raised at this time.
No one has, okay. If we can keep it to a 3-minute minimum for open to the public, and I'll call on Dave Nelson. Come on down, Dave. Welcome, Dave.
Thank you. Dave Nelson, 2574 East 4th Avenue. I'm going to talk on Southwood. I took the Master Naturalist class here probably about 13 or 14 years ago, and my capstone was that 1 acre out in the front. And that was where Henry Castle, when he first rode in here from the history that we looked at, he come into town, he had to stand up on his saddle, not on top, but the stirrup stand up to see what it looked like. So we're trying to restore, with all the native plants, we're trying to restore that area back to what North St. Paul was like. We've been putting a lot of plants in. We removed a lot of garbage out of there, restored a lot of stuff. But who's ever doing the spraying has been killing the plants. My wife and I have put $400 plus plants in there. We put cardinal flower in, butterfly weed. We even have a wild monarch garden going. What do? They come by, run over it, and with the tank, they're spraying here, and the fog just goes. And when you look at the butterfly garden, the flowers like this. Now you look at the leaves, they're starting to curl up. Now if that butterfly lays a larvae there, that's going to die. Nothing's going to produce. And we just finally got that thing going 4 years now. And this spring, I met a guy out there we were pulling yellow and garlic mustard, and plus small unwanted trees that were, like ash and that, getting them out. So it's a regular prairie, it's supposed to be prairie setup. And I asked him, I said, can I help you? He says, I'm out here to see what we have to spray. I says, can you spot spray? I says, I know you can put a tank on your back and go and just spot spray the plants. No, they take the four-wheeler, and when they shoot a fog here, it drifts, wipes out everything. We only have one butterfly plant that's blooming out there yet from the 6 we put in. The 4 cardinal flowers, they totally took out, and my wife, she put in a wild rose garden, spirea roses out there for the butterflies, and they sprayed that every time and kill it. That gets a little bit expensive out of my pocket. They took down the split rail fence. We had a lot of compliments on the split rail fence. They said that really makes North St. Paul look like the country. And we had a lot of volunteers do a lot of work. I know Mayor, he helped a lot out there. You helped us put up the deck. You helped with park cleanup. Candy worked with cleanup. And all the residents around there. Now, the wood chips, it need to be chipped bad. It's so encroached that one person can only walk in certain spots. That's how wide the trail is. I know they had somebody go through with the lawnmower, and I appreciated that, widen the trail out. But it needs to be wood chipped again. And the last time, it's got to be probably 6, 7 years ago, I left the meeting because when we were on the park commission, we were charged $50 a load, and that was coming out of the budget from Southwood. So I get a hold of Victoria Reinhardt, and I says, can you do me a favor? I says, I need wood chips. Where can I get them for free? I says, North St. Paul's charged me $50 a load. And then she says, how much you want? I want 2 semis. 2 semis come. They dropped it off on Saturday. And when the city workers were with the loader, we spread it. And the guy from Ramsey County come and to see, because he figured it'd take a week to spread it. The truck was empty. He says, you'll have the next load in 45 minutes. We had the whole thing spread that weekend, and it looked nice. We had a lot of people comment on it and that. And there is a lot of people that do use that park, and my wife and I go around, we pull garlic mustard and all that too. So there's a lot of volunteer work that's going in there. Some of the people have moved on. We can use some more people to help volunteer and that, but it's going back the other way. And we're getting older, it's harder for us and that, and some of the people are kind of getting a little disgusted the way it looks.
But thank you, Dave, for your service, and Donna, you always, your volunteer time out
Vic
down
and
this.
Vivian
Yep.
and Kathy and
Yep. Yep, so when it comes to the spraying, we're not doing it.
No,
We're not
I mean-
spraying it. We just got to figure out, to be able to help you to determine, who's spraying and
I
make
told
sure
him-
they're not doing the wrong plants.
Yeah, I told him, I says, if you can't spot spray, please stay out, because you're destroying the plants.
But I'm assuming that comes from the Southwood Preserve.
I don't know
committee.
who hired them or what, but.
Right,
you
so
can't
we'll have
spot
to,
spray.
look into that. And then the wood chips, I know it depends on what year. I mean,
Yeah.
one year they had probably a storm that went, and they had more wood chips than they knew what to do with. But I know that, wood chips is kind of hard to get now, because we haven't had those storms in the
Yeah, but it's
last few years.
starting to
But-
go backwards.
Yep.
Because we're getting older, and some of them have left.
Yep, but I know there is a Southwood Nature Preserve Committee, and we need to address them too, to figure out, their
Yeah,
needs.
if they would
'cause-
it would help too.
Yep, so thank you.
But no, I appreciate what everybody's doing and that, but if it comes to a point you don't want us out there, please give me a letter saying no more work out there.
We want you there. We do want you there.
Because, but it's kind of disgusted when they went through and the money we stuck in there, and they kill it all. And I even went out there and we put flags up, don't spray here, don't do here, you know, circle it.
Right.
And they will not listen.
We need to figure that out.
Yeah, because at the beginning, I walked with a tank and I spot sprayed.
Sure.
But, you know,
Yep.
since I'm not in the park commission or the commission anymore, I don't do that.
So Brian's taking notes, and we'll look in to see who's spraying, and
Oh, is he gonna volunteer?
he's going to volunteer to go do it.
Anyway,
Well, thank you, David.
yeah, thank you.
Yeah, appreciate it. John Schmall? Welcome, John.
Thank you, Mayor. John Schmall, 2750 Chisholm Avenue. First item, I'd just like to say I'm very thankful that we have media and newspapers that will take up pleas to look into what cities do, and that we had a recent example of that. And as I say again, I'm really thankful that we have media that will take an interest in what might be happening in a city. I know that I got involved in dealing with the media many years ago when we had PolarNet, and I certainly didn't want it. And imagine what a mess we would have been in now with a cord cutting with our own internet provider. It would have been a mess, and it wasn't a fun time. People who were against it weren't treated very nicely. Anyway, second item, I got my water bill. I happened to be reading the White Bear paper, the little organ that they have, and in there they had an article about the last meeting on the water situation, and 75 gallons per capita. And I looked at my water bill this month. I used up 154 days, and I didn't water that much. So you can only think about, if we have to change over, what's going to happen. It's not going to be pretty. Last item is, I was here a while ago, said this arm doesn't work, and the reason that I brought it up was that, you know what I brought up twice before, and even Councilmember Thorson tried to intercede and ask, you know, can't you get an answer to Mr. Schmall? That didn't do any good either. So maybe it's a situation where you can say, Electric Superintendent Frandl, have you heard about what Mr. Schmall has asked for? No.
John, we're not here to.
Well, anyway,
We
this
have,
is the
we
third
have the
time.
electric guy right here.
And will he answer me? I have just as a personal experience, I'm trying to get the internet at my cabin in northern Wisconsin. There's one person who says, no, you're not going by my property and having it buried in the property. There, they respect property rights. Here in this city, they just do it. So what is going to be the answer? Thank you.
Brian, can you reach out to John? You want to reach out now, or you?
I actually reached out to John last fall and told him that, well, I don't know how far you want to get into this, but told him that my intention was not to go out there and dig that up the way it was, because the way it stands right now is, if you looked at, all that was in the front of the property was a lath. It wasn't a property pin that I was looking at. He said somewhere in the back there was a property pin. And he was saying that's the line, that's the property line. So in looking at that wire that was located there looked like it could have been 6 inches potentially on his property. And another thing that I explained to him then was locating is not an exact science. That is why the Minnesota state statute says when you're going off of locates, you cannot dig by mechanical means within a locate mark within 2 feet, because it's not an exact science. So that could very well be 10 inches or 6 inches or more actually on the neighbor's property. We don't know that. And I know the suggestion came up that, well, maybe that should be dug up for him. Well, I don't think that should. I don't think we are public contractors to do that type of work. When they put that in, it was a common practice, you dig down the property line. And they dug down, you went the same distance, and then on each house, his neighbor also has a meter box directly out from his. So they put it down the property line, and then they went off to the houses from there. That was a common practice. Now, I mean, even when you're doing it with a backhoe, you separate the services to each side of the trench that you dig, you know, and then it gets buried back. Sometimes a wire moves when the dirt gets pushed into the hole. But I had no intention of going out there and digging up his front lawn to move that 6 inches, if that's even where it's at. We do not know that. The neighbor's service is also right there in the trench as well. So who knows, that service, his service could actually be on his neighbor's property. We just don't know that. And that, we actually have that probably in quite a few places around our system. That's just the way it was dug in at the time. And to say that it's not safe for people to dig around them if it's that important to him, people do it every day, whether or not they're building decks, they're putting in fences, they're doing additions on their own. It happens all the time.
How deep is it?
It could be anywhere from 30 inches to 48 inches more in some places.
So I guess, John, at this time, we're not gonna be digging it up to see where that, just,
Finding that line with these new hydraulic systems that they have, they were just down the street finding gas lines and electric lines for putting in Comcast cables. And, or I'm sorry, it was Xfinity. It's cool. You ought to see it. They do it with water. And they go down. The guy showed me. See down there? There's the gas line. This doesn't require getting a shovel and digging down and a backhoe. It doesn't require it.
Okay.
They just use water. And they make a hole about the size of a little bigger than a grapefruit. Go right down over it. Found it. It was a plastic,
I think the point here is that this is down 4 feet, 5 feet,
It could be, yes.
and if it's off 2 inches, you want us to go and move it 2 inches?
who knows that it's 2 inches? Who says it's 2 inches?
I have no idea.
Nobody knows. You gotta go find it. You know,
But what is how is it?
It's on my property. No one asked for an easement for the neighbor's line.
If it's on your if it's on your property.
Pardon?
If it's on your property.
It is on my property.
Well, I think that's debatable.
That is
So,
debatable. And if we start doing private contract work, that certainly opens up
okay,
a lot of doors.
we're gonna move on here. So we have nobody else for public comment? So at this time, we have the city business and action items, and that is acting city manager Brian.
Thank you, Mayor. The first thing up is an amendment resolution for flood hazard mitigation grant funding. This is being brought forward by Pat Lynch from the DNR. So the amendment, the resolution 2021-057 states the applicant has the financial capability to provide any required matching funds, and that the source of the applicant's matching funds shall be $120,000. In review by the Minnesota Management and Budget, the amount should match the city's share for the surface water utility fund, which is $180,000. And they were looking for that amendment.
So this is for the property, Sean Rivet's property, in regards to his request for us to purchase his property. And this would be for us to take the grant, and it's a matching grant.
Matching grant, correct.
And, you know, to me, there's a lot more questions here in regards to, so if we accept this tonight, so the question is, are we accepting this tonight for that? Would that-
Can I just say something? I actually spoke with Pat, and this is a resolution that was already passed. The only change in that is it was $120,000, and he said it needs to be $180,000 by the MMB. that
so
dollar
this-
amount needed to be, this resolution's already been passed. So in order to continue moving forward, this new resolution with the correct dollar amount needs to be passed. It was.
So that's just accepted, we're still in negotiation, though. It
Right.
doesn't mean that,
Yeah, I just wanted to clarify at a staff level, so I don't believe that adopting this resolution locks the council in to move forward with accepting the grant or allocating those match dollars, but it is a requirement of the DNR that we have that resolution approved and in place. I think they're just aligning numbers, right, with the application probably.
that's
I-
holding that
so
number
it's-
for us.
It's a housekeeping measure, it's probably a formality, but staff does need to have that conversation formally with the council about whether they want to move forward if the grant is awarded, which I think we think it will be formally, maybe once this resolution is passed, but we certainly need to have that conversation with council.
Okay. Any questions for Soren or city manager?
So again, my only question is, the acceptance of the resolution is we're accepting the financial amendment to what the DNR is asking for. We're not necessarily aligning, agreeing, or disagreeing with the ask of the resident, correct?
I have not reviewed this, so I'm going to defer to other staff who's maybe been in communication with the DNR, but based on what I'm hearing tonight, that's my understanding.
This is the exact resolution that was approved, that resolution number 57. And the only change to that was the dollar amount, and that's in order to proceed to get that grant.
And at that time, that
Receive that
was
grant.
So the
the
grant,
assumption.
still hasn't been awarded or rejected?
No, no.
And this does not commit us to the purchase of the property.
That's my understanding, so certainly the city would need to
Okay.
allocate those match dollars and move forward with the purchase of the property with the grant dollars. Staff's previous activity was simply to apply for the funds, and if awarded, then have that further continuation of that discussion with city council in terms of moving forward, next steps.
Any other discussion for Morgan? If not,
I completely understood our clerk's explanation. We've already passed this. It's a technicality to update the dollar amount.
okay. So at this time, the resolution is to, resolution to amend the resolution, 2021-057 for flood hazard mitigation grant funding assistance to the city of North St. Paul. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Moved by Councilmember Thorson. Is there a second?
I'll second it, Your Honor.
Second by Councilmember Peterson. Any discussion? If not, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Oppose? Motion carries. City Manager Brian Frandl.
Thank you, Mayor. Action item B is the zoning code text amendment to implement the 2040 comprehensive plan, and Eric is here to discuss that this evening.
Welcome, Eric.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. This is the third time you have seen this project. We brought it forward on the regular agenda on June 1st, and then reviewed it at the work session on June 15th, and then was directed to bring this back. A couple things to note. So from that work session, there was no direction to make any amendments, so it's the same ordinance. In talking with the city clerk today, it is a 49-page ordinance, which would be cost prohibitive to publish in the paper, and the state statute does allow us to do a summary ordinance. So we've updated the packet today to include the summary ordinance, which is only 3 pages, but to publish that, there's a resolution that needs to authorize that summary ordinance. So there's 3 documents, but talking with the city attorney, we only need 2 votes. The first one would be on the overall ordinance, which would require just a simple majority. You can do the motion for the summary ordinance and the resolution authorizing the publication of the summary ordinance in one, but by state statute, that requires a 4/5 majority to have that summary ordinance. So it's all the same text amendments we reviewed previously. Just to simplify the publication, we're asking for the 2 motions. As I amended it in the staff report that went with this, The ordinance has already been available on our website, and the full ordinance will be available in paper here at City Hall. So anybody who wants to see the ordinance can still see the ordinance. It just won't be published in the Star Tribune, all 49 pages with this. So with that, I would stand for any questions.
Any questions for Eric? I guess I'm confused on the motions that you need,
We need one motion on the ordinance, and then we need a second motion on the summary ordinance and the resolution authorizing publication of the summary ordinance.
and I'm not seeing that,
It's on
unless
page
someone can help
5.
me.
Page 5 of 65 in the zoning text amendment packet attachment.
And I did talk with the communications consultant, and she did instruct me that I can attach those separately in the future to try not to put all these ordinances all into one package. But thank you, Councilmember Thorson, for pointing out the page.
I can read it too.
Well, I'm not seeing it on here. And then I just lost the page. Give me a second here. I lost my city clerk page.
Page 123, Mayor.
I'm close. What page did you say, 123?
Yes.
Okay. So Eric, you want, if it's page 123, this is the,
Mayor, it's an ordinance amending the North St. Paul City Court of Ordinances, including, and I'll just talk about the sections, but Title 7, Chapter 72, Section 4, and then Title 15, Chapter 154, Sections 3, 6, 7, 8, and 10.
yeah, I don't have that.
It should be right before the minutes.
I have it here. I mean, I can just show it to you, or I can read it. I mean,
Why don't you go ahead.
Okay, so the first ordinance is on page 5 of 65. Well, I think it's just, we can square that away after the meeting. But it's the ordinance amending the North St. Paul City Code of Ordinances, Title VII, Traffic Code, Chapter 72, Section 4, Truck Parking Restrictions, and Title XV, Land Usage, Chapter 154, Zoning Regulations, Section 3, Definitions, Section 6, Residential Districts, Section 7, Mixed-Use Districts, Section 8, Overlay Districts, and Section 10, General Regulations.
Is there a motion?
So moved.
Moved by Councilmember Thorson.
Second.
Second, Councilmember Peterson. Any discussion? If not, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the motion carries.
And then the second motion here is on page 50. Let's see here. 54, 65. And you said we can do these individually, or we can do them together? It doesn't matter. Okay.
Councilmember Thorson, you can do both actions with one single.
Okay, so I'll make a motion and I'll read these two. An ordinance amending the North St. Paul this is a summary publication, an ordinance amending the North St. Paul City Codes of Ordinances, Title VII Traffic Code, Chapter 72, Section 4, Truck Parking Restricted, and Title XV, Land Usage, Chapter 154, Zoning Regulations, Section 3, Definitions, Section 6, Residential Districts, Section 7, Mixed-Use Districts, Section 8, Overlay Districts, and Section 10, General Regulations, and resolution approving publication of ordinances amending the North St. Paul City Code of Ordinances. And I'm not going to read all that again. I think we
It's a
get it,
repeat.
okay?
Yeah, it's a repeat of the ordinance,
Okay.
just the resolution.
Yeah.
That's why I didn't want to read it, because it was too long.
It's called delegation. We're happy to help.
Motion to approve the resolution.
So moved.
Moved by Councilmember Thorson, second by Councilmember Wong. Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye. Aye.
Opposed, motion carries.
Thank you, Mayor. Council.
Thank you, Eric. Appreciate it. I still can't find it.
We'll move on to
Move on to city manager.
city business action item C, consideration to approve resolution approving common interest agreement, water appropriations permit amendment appeal. Soren will be covering this.
Thanks, Brian. Mr. Mayor, members of the council, what's before you is, for your consideration, is a proposed resolution that allows the city of North St. Paul to work with some of the surrounding communities as we prepare for the hearing with the DNR as it relates to the water appropriation permit. I believe we've spoken about that water appropriation permit. As we know, as a result of the White Bear Lake litigation, the DNR has reached out to multiple communities that were within a 5-mile range of White Bear Lake to modify our water appropriation permit based on Judge Marinen's district court ruling. The city did object to that. There are several things in the order that are concerning, things like watering bans, things like investigating, looking into surface water, and an overall reduction in our water appropriation. It is exceptionally objectionable in some respects because the DNR themselves have said the science doesn't support the very things that seemingly they're looking to require at this point. So that has been appealed. We are going to have a hearing on it. Because it impacts multiple cities, we are trying to do this as economical as possible by sharing ideas with some of the other cities, both in strategy and ultimately some discovery. And so under the law, what we need to do is receive permission from you, the client, to work with them as we move forward. We are dealing with issues of whether we should consolidate the appeal, whether we have just one hearing with 11 communities present or whatever, how many communities it is, or whether we should have individual hearings. We're still working through that, but this agreement allows us to communicate with each other to talk about that process. So ultimately, we are still pursuing the objectives that the council authorized us to pursue when we originally appealed this determination. This, I believe, allows us to do it more efficiently. So I'll certainly stand for any questions. Otherwise, we are asking you to approve the resolution that's before you. In terms of status, we don't have any hearing dates set yet. We're still in the preliminary stages. I think the administrative law judge is still trying to wrap his arms around what's the best path forward. There are outside parties that have tried to insert themselves into the hearing. We're trying to decide whether all of the communities want to work together, maybe just on the discovery, or do we try certain issues? We're still in the process, so I don't necessarily have a report for you on the standing of it, other than that it's in the works. We think we'll be able to try these up within several months, but not in the immediate future either.
Soren, this is going to be a long process, isn't it?
Certainly stands like it could be.
Yep.
Yep.
All right. Any questions for city attorney? If not, I do have that in front of me. Resolution for approving common interest agreement, water appropriation permit amendment appeal. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Moved by Councilmember Thorson. Second by Councilmember Wong. Any discussion? If not, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the motion carries.
Thank you.
Next on the agenda is process hiring of the city manager. I don't know if, Brian, if you want to, I know we got Soren here now, so we're,
Yep, now's our time to expand the conversation and have Soren step in.
so Soren, we did have in the workshop, we did talk about this, and our question was in regards to, I think we're all in favor of going out to an outside agency. I think that's in the best interest of the city as the council. We talked about it, and we think that's the best way to go. But one of the question is, so do we go with an RFP to get all these agencies to get an RFP, or in your mind, I mean, is there an agency out there that you've dealt with that you feel we could expedite this process and still get the best results?
You know, I think I've dealt with them all, and I don't necessarily have a go-to on these. Sometimes I'm involved with the city, sometimes I'm not. What may be best, my concern with an RFP, and you can certainly do that, although you're not required to. I don't know if you guys talked about the expense, but I think you should anticipate this process will be in the $20,000 to $25,000 range. What I have typically seen happen is there's the usual suspects. We solicit them, we send out a request for a quote on it, and then we just empower the city manager to select a firm. And then that firm takes over the hiring process. We can certainly do an RFP, and then we can bring them back to you. You can interview them. I think that if we hired a consultant tomorrow to begin the process, you're probably looking at a minimum of 3, possibly 4 months before you get a city manager in. I think if you do the RFP process where we advertise it, bring in the consultants, interview them at a council level, I think you're stacking at least another 2 months on that process. So I think to simplify it, what I've seen most communities do is just simply direct Brian to solicit quotes, and then bring back his recommendation for the council, engage them, and then let them do their thing, so to speak.
Council, questions for Soren? Councilmember Thorson?
Yeah, so, and correct me if I'm wrong, but my understanding on how these outside consultants work is they essentially, once we determine on who that is, do they kind of come in and meet with each council member on a one-on-one basis, and then they talk to us as a council as a whole, get direction on kind of the process being what type of person you're looking for, and then how many final candidates are you looking for us to bring forward for you to interview? Is it 10? Is it 3? Is it 2? Whatever, and then it just moves forward.
Yep.
In that sense, we're involved. Our involvement is the selection, and then giving them initial direction on what type of person, and then from there they're doing it all.
Yep.
And then they're bringing forth the final list of candidates. So in respect of expediting this process, I would certainly agree with what you've laid out, and that, we can have further discussion once we move farther along, as far as, obviously if we tell them, bring us 3 candidates, that's gonna be quicker than 10,
Yeah.
so.
Yep, and I think the feedback in terms of what you're looking for, management style, things of that nature are important. In my experience, one of the nice things with using a consultant is that, one, sometimes they have a stable of people that they know are interested or looking for moving up, so there's a recruitment process in there, and that's not just, listing an ad and waiting for the phone to ring. They sometimes go out and recruit. In addition, it's a nice filter, candidly. They can indicate that they've talked to the council, they have a sense of where they're at, and it allows potential candidates to use them as a sounding board to kind of feel out the process and the position. So it's nice to have that buffer. You give the initial direction, and then they carry out. And they, of course, work with Brian and other staff as need be, but it's nice because they just handle it, and they do it, and they do a good job.
It sounds like that's process, and I think we're pretty comfortable with that.
Okay.
Allowing Brian to make that call to agencies or whatever, and you can work with them and pick out the right one and get the right person.
Right. So I think we would probably, I would think we can get this done in the next month. You don't have a meeting, you don't have your first meeting in August, is my understanding. So I
Correct.
think we will be bringing back a recommendation for a consultant at your August 17th meeting.
Okay. We need a motion for that then?
I think we can stand on direction as long as you understand that's the process. We're not asking for you to necessarily approve anything tonight. We just want you to know that's what we're going to do. And, you know, obviously, if there's objections to the consultant brought forward, then we can discuss that. That'll delay the process. But I think we'll be able to bring you back a solid recommendation.
Yep. I think we're all in agreement with that.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Soren. City Manager Frandl.
Thank you, Mayor. For reports from the city manager, just a quick update on a couple of developments. We have the 7th Street townhomes. So as you know, as I reported last time, the first lift of the road and the curb line is in. Since that time, we've done the joint trench digging out there. So we've installed the conduit for electric, and also that was buried in that trench was gas, and Comcast put in the trench as well. We have a contractor coming out, hopefully this Friday. We'll be boring across 7th Street to get to the other side. We'll be bringing us and Comcast with that, and gas is in the process of boring that road as well. But that project's moving along well. I forwarded the development contract to them. They reviewed it. The initial contract wasn't signed, so there was a little bit of figuring out there of what the actual amount would be for the permits and the fees. So we've had that back and forth. I think we're close to that number, which then we will turn around and get the signatures on for the project. Also, the downtown Centennial, it's moving along well. They're, met with them there today. They're in the process of getting close to doing the drainage system underneath their parking lot over there, and speaking with Midstate. The inside seems to be going well. 3rd floor is mostly done. It sounds like 2nd floor's got a pretty good start to it as well. Within hopefully 3 weeks, we'll be, they'll have formed up the pad for the transformer, and we'll get the power in there. And then get our loop feed fed to the building as well. And it won't be long after that, they'll be ready for us to place meters out there and get that energized. So it's moving along. That's the updates I have for you.
That's it?
I know, I'm slacking.
Not bad. Not at all. I'm going to go off agenda here, and let's introduce our new, our finance director, and maybe he can say hi and give a little, maybe a little background on yourself, and welcome Dan to the city of North St. Paul. I know I haven't given you a pin yet, so I do owe you. I do owe you a pin to put on your lapel, so you do have one of these coming. So, Dan, if you want to say a few words. And
Mayor and council members, thank you very much. Actually, this is an honor for me to have been selected to be the finance director of the extraordinary city of North St. Paul. I have over 30 years of government experience, primarily in Ramsey County. I've been telling this story, and so I'm going to tell the story to the city council. You know, I woke up a few times after I had accepted the position and thought, what am I doing? Because I have a lot to learn, and we've got some new accounting softwares that are coming in August here, and obviously learning you know, your processes and so forth. And I thought, what am I doing? And I got a little worried, had a couple of sleepless nights. My first day was last Monday. After that day, I went home, told my wife I've made the right choice. I was totally amazed at the professionalism, the friendliness, and the dedication and the quality of the staff that is here at the city of North St. Paul. and I am honored to be here, and I will not fail you. And I thank you very much.
And you looked at the council and the mayor and you said, oh my God, what a great group of people.
Absolutely, it is still going, just, no, this was a very nice discussion and get a sense and a feel for your expertise. So, yes, I'm honored, so thank you.
Good. Well, welcome, and we look forward to working with you, and I know this is a kind of a tough time to jump in, right during budget and, working with the council and everything. So we look forward to working with you, so thank you for joining our team. So, all right, reports of council, commissions, and committees. Councilmember Cole.
Next Park and Rec Commission meeting is the 28th, next Wednesday night. It's at McKnight Field. In conversation, it sounds like it's going to be around the concession area because there'll be picnic tables around to be able to accommodate seating. There will be a community meeting from 6 to 6:30, followed by the Park and Rec meeting right after that. One quick update from last month's Park and Rec meeting. I had a resident reach out to me regarding the Ramsey County open space. Apparently, the open space must border the residents' property line. He had reached out to Ramsey County as well as the city of Maplewood. It is not one of what is deemed one of the open spaces that Ramsey County recognizes. And when the resident contacted Maplewood, the resident was instructed that that's North St. Paul property. I did reach back out to the resident and asked that individual to contact staff with their findings and share with. Evidently, there must be a little area of land over there that there are people residing in, tent community, and there's been some other things going on, and the residents having a hard time just trying to figure out who to talk to for resolution, not necessarily looking to move anybody, but just somebody to take ownership to the area. So that's just a quick follow-up. It's been a busy couple of weeks. We had an EDA meeting. Primary two topics for the EDA meeting were the redevelopment master plan and whether we're going to go forward and update that, as well as the downtown parking needs and what they look like in the near future and long future. There were no actions that came from this meeting for council at this time. So followed up by 2 days later, an EDA and Planning Committee joint meeting. Again, really no actionable issues or topics that came out of that. It was well attended by council. Councilmember Wong, Mayor Furlong, and myself were in attendance, and I'm sure one or both of you may have additional insight to share. That's it. I'm going to stop. I got pages, but I'm going to stop.
Councilmember Wong.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, just to add on in terms of the joint meeting, I think, the redevelopment master plan was something that I think overall was desired to do maybe a little bit of a facelift. So just kind of touching base and kind of doing some updates with that. And then, I think it was well attended, and it was nice to see the Planning Commission and the EDA in person, so that was our first meeting. But other than that, the Planning Commission has not met, because we had a month off, and so we will meet again on the first Thursday of this month, or August, excuse me.
Councilmember Peterson.
Yeah, I've had a couple busy weeks with the League of Minnesota Cities. We got some new members on the board, and that's in good hands. I have one more year to serve. And I was on a policy meeting on state revenues last week to see where all the money is going, and that's been pretty informative. And today I was on a financial, for the league, policy committee, and the dues went down 1%.
Oh.
So that's good. I don't know what it's all gonna cost, but at least it went down, it didn't go up. Last year, they didn't have a raise because of the COVID, so they're pretty healthy, so, with their budget. Thank you.
Okay, and I've got, just to add to the EDA joint meeting, we talked about the parking lot behind behind K&J, the big parking lot, and it was good discussion in regards to the need for parking downtown. And that lot really needs a lot of work, so Morgan, I think that's part of the capital improvement plan. I know we talked about that, and, we may want to look at that, doing that sooner than later. And then we had a meeting with the Arts Council, looking at adding members to the Arts Council, going through all the applications. Councilmember Wong and myself and the chair, Tom Sonic, we had 8 applications and all great candidates, and so we'll be looking at bringing forth the Arts Council here in the next couple of meetings. So general business, Councilmember Cole.
Last week, Mayor Furlong, Councilmember Wong, and myself had the opportunity to work the grill for the North St. Paul firefighters and their families. It was a phenomenal opportunity for the three of us to be there. The attendance was fantastic. They brought the bouncy house out for the kids. Everybody brought something, a dish to pass. And it was just, again, just check the box. It was something that didn't happen last year because of COVID. It was just a great opportunity to get to see everybody out there again, where you're, as opposed to just the booyah when you're standing there with your bowl and a mask on. So it was a phenomenal opportunity. We also had a meeting with the bar owners, the director of the car show, their chief of police, city manager, and Mayor Furlong to discuss the open container that was happening at the last car show. I was very surprised by the openness and the willingness of the bar owners. They love the fact that they've got patio space out in front of their properties. They love the fact that they've got outdoor seating, and they are willing to work with the city in any way, shape, or form to enable for this opportunity to continue, as well as self-policing. They talked about putting up barricades to designate an area. I was down on Friday night. The bars did have barriers up, kind of designating the drinking area. They had signage up, et cetera. So it was just phenomenal to see the partnership that exists between the city, the car show, and the bar owners. And the only other thing I'm going to kick on is National Night Out. But Candy, are you going to cover that?
Yeah, I just wrote it down.
All right, it's yours.
Councilmember Wong.
Yeah, other than, the firemen's annual picnic, that was great and had a lot of fun. So it's good to see everyone out in good spirits and the little kitties around in the bounce. Other than that, I don't have any other updates.
Councilmember Peterson.
Well, the car show was phenomenal, again. Talking about for a need for parking, we certainly do, but a lot of comments. I know people, when I'm out working at Oakland, they all have the old cars and they come into North St. Paul. I said, I hope you're spending money while you're here, but I don't know if they do or not. And I want to talk about National Night Out. I want to remind the residents that that's coming up on August 3rd. And Carrie, is there going to be a list on the city website or?
Right now, we're taking applications through OpenGov. I think we have 11 residences that are ordered right now. And then the other addition that came up this week is police and fire are going to also host an open house at City Hall for residents who maybe aren't getting together with their blocks.
Okay, very good. Yeah, I always look forward to that. It's fun. I don't eat all of them. I'll have a chip and maybe a pickle, and maybe I end up on Indian Way because that's one of the better ones because I live up on Indian Way. But no, I just encourage everyone to come on out. It's good to meet your neighbors, and I think we're going to require masks up on Indian Way. I haven't really talked to the person in charge, but
Require what?
she wants to do.
What'd you say?
She might be requiring masks.
Okay.
And I have no problem with that. She's
Yep.
the coordinator, and I said, let's do that. So, yeah, that's all I have. Thanks.
Are they, just real quick, are they asking for council members to show up?
Yes, some have checked that box and some haven't.
So I will not be there that night. That, just to let you know, I won't be. I'll be with my daughter, with the baby. General Business, Councilmember Thorson.
Yeah, a couple of items. First question is kind of general. What, is there a plan to get the council chambers back to normal?
Back to normal.
I mean, it looks like the audience section is kind of restored to half to normal, and it has been for several meetings, and.
I think we're pretty, yeah, I don't see why not.
Okay. All right. And then I asked a question about, I think it was at the June, I can't remember now, but there was a meeting where we were handed, or I submitted to the clerk to put in the record the litigation with the planning commission. And I think there was some confusion because at that same meeting, RT had submitted some emails, and there was some back and forth between the city attorney and a clerk, and that it never got in, neither of them got involved in, or included in the agenda, which maybe we can include that tonight, because I asked a question about what the cost of the litigation was, and I got a follow-up here. The total cost of the city of North St. Paul for that frivolous lawsuit was $28,870.45, and I just point that out because I think it's important for the public to know and understand when these things happen. So I'll give that to you, and just wanted to follow up on that question, and that's all.
I can try and answer that question. So when we talk about submitting documents for the record, they are part of the record. They become a document that the city is required to store and maintain. Minutes are traditionally a summary of the proceedings. They'll reference a document, and you can come in and get the document. We have not traditionally taken whole documents and attached them to the minutes, and so when Jenny had inquired of me, I said, well, when RT submitted that, that is part of the record. The city does possess it. If anyone ever came in and said, I want to see the document that RT submitted, we have it, we could produce it. But we usually don't typically do, or I haven't seen it anywhere, where we do like attachments to the minutes, and that's in an effort to just reduce the size of the document itself. You can embed a link into the minutes, you can reference it, and then produce it. So if there's a desire to do it differently, we can, but that was the nature of my advice when Jenny had inquired of, well, if someone submits it and it's in the record, do I actually have to attach it to the minutes? And I don't feel you have to. If we want to do it differently, we can, but that would take some direction from the council.
And I guess the only reason I bring it up is because, with all this technology upgrades we have, it doesn't seem to me that it's that difficult to add a link in or a reference to it, because it helps avoid a data request, which takes staff time. It's being transparent. The fact that it was mentioned in the general meeting, like now, that would be where you would look for it, I would imagine, in the meeting minutes. If, you were following along and wanted to know. I certainly wasn't gonna read the 59 pages of the summary and that as well, so I don't know if that's something we need to talk about for additional items, or if it's in the future, if it's something that like in this case, I should have gone into this new civic clerk and attached it. Would that be appropriate?
I still think to keep our records process, that everything should go through the deputy clerk.
Okay.
So I think that's still the right process to send those to Jenny, and then, again, whatever council directs us to do as far as adding attachments or links to those documents on our electronic services, we certainly can deal with that.
Jenny, how hard is it or have you done it where you embed a link if it references a document? Have you been doing that in the minutes up till now?
No, but I did reference that that we received the documents, so I do have the documents on hand.
Right. I think it just becomes an issue of if you then go to the minutes and it references the document, at least on the electronic version, and I don't know, I will follow your lead, but I've never seen it where you attach a hard copy as part of the minutes. There's either a reference and then you ask for the document, or maybe we can embed a link. I don't know how hard that is. I don't want to start volunteering for Jenny on that, but That may be the solution, so that if you go online, which is a typical way of looking at the minutes, if there's a link, you can press it and you can get the document. That may be a solution rather than attaching it.
You want to discuss it at a workshop, and
Sure, if there's time, I know.
we could add it to a workshop? It'd be a good discussion.
Yep.
Yep. Not high priority right now, but I would assume, unless Scott, do you want it?
No, I mean, I just, I think that's why I submitted it, so it was easy for someone to find, rather than, because the process of doing a data request is, unless you've done it, I don't think there's a lot of people interested in that, and this whole going online thing, I just envisioned it being easier to embed a link or what have you, and if it's not, then so be it, but that's how I've been following along in our meeting, these embedded links with everything, so.
Okay, sounds good. Are you done? Sorry, okay. I would like to piggyback on the National Night Out. I mentioned that. I will not be here. Also, the downtown businesses, when we talked to them in regards to outdoor furniture, that was something that was brought up, and I think we should add that also to a workshop item, because I think the thought was that we would offer all this outdoor furniture for downtown, and I don't know if that's, I think as a council, we should talk about that, whether or not the business owners are going to purchase it, or if the city's going to purchase all that, and would we store it. I think that's a good discussion for another workshop, and we should probably do it. I think it'd be a good winter project for us, but I would add it to a workshop at some point here. And I think that's all thank you. The Business Association is having their picnic down at Casey Lake on June 10th. August 10th. Thank you, Carrie and Candy. August 10th, and is there a time?
It'll be noonish, I would think, 11:30. There's not gonna be a program. I think it's just a fun event.
Okay, so August 10th for the business meeting down at Casey Lake. And I believe that's all I have at this time, so nothing else?
Mayor?
Yep.
If you wouldn't mind, I think it's worth maybe having a quick discussion due to the drought conditions going through the state right now and the water conservation that has been talked about. I'd like to turn it over to Morgan to discuss that a little bit.
Okay. Mr. Mayor, members of the council, so this is really kind of a public service announcement for the benefit of the council, any public that are watching the meeting here tonight. City staff has posted information on the city's website related to asking residents to exercise some measures in terms of conserving water, and that is based off of information coming from the DNR in terms of within the state of Minnesota right now, approximately 50% of the state is in extreme drought conditions. According to the DNR, about 5% of the state is actually in more serious drought conditions. Now here in Ramsey County, it's only considered a moderate drought. One of the measures that we have, or any city would have in terms of moderating or reacting to this kind of announcement by the DNR, is whether or not we're having difficulty keeping up with our peak water pumping demands in terms of our water distribution system. I'm pleased to report that we don't have any current issues. There's no shortage of water within the city of North St. Paul, and so there's certainly no need for any concern. However, in accordance with our water supply plan, which is something that we update every 10 years as a requirement with the DNR, when these types of announcements come out from the DNR in terms of drought conditions existing within the state, it's important to refer to that plan. And at this point, again, knowing that we don't have any concerns, we're simply providing information an advisory to the public, a request to maybe think twice before using water wastefully, and to consider some tips and tricks that, again, we've posted on the website. And this is fairly common. So knowing that we are in a moderate drought condition, staff will continue to keep an eye on things, keep an eye on our water pumping and our water distribution system. Again, no issues, no problems right now, but just recognizing the fact from a weather condition standpoint, which is certainly outside of our control, we want to be resilient and be able to react to that and provide information to the public. And if we do see any need for changes or moderating or changing that type of information that we're putting forth to the public, we'll make that available. You know, it could potentially come to pass that we might need to enact some restrictions because of this, again, in accordance with our water supply plan, but there's no need to do that right now, and hopefully we come out of this seasonal and cyclical period without too much trouble, as typically when we move into the fall months, it gets a little bit wetter. But I just wanted to point that out to the council, again, to anyone in the public that's interested. There is information posted on the website, again, with some things to think about maybe while you're using water, again, in the interest of conservation and not being wasteful with the use of it. So just wanted to put that out there.
Our communications person, you've taken note, and you'll put that on the website as our community announcement.
It's already there.
It's already there, good.
It's
good.
the lead story in our City E-News for tomorrow. Well, it's the second story because the first story is Dan.
She's that good.
She's that good. So somebody mentioned to me today about Gooseberry Falls up on Lake Superior, and there's no water in Gooseberry Falls right now. Just amazing. You know, typically there's water, and there's nothing being at Gooseberry. So interesting. So at this time, motion to adjourn. We do have a HRA meeting after the general meeting here, so need a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Moved by Councilmember Thorson, second by Councilmember Cole. Any discussion? Not all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. We'll take a quick couple-minute break here, and then we'll start the HRA. Housing and Redevelopment Authority meeting for July 20th. Jenny, if you could take the roll.
Member Thorson?
Here.
Member Peterson? Here. Member Wong?
Here.
Member Cole?
Here.
Chair Furlong?
Here. So we have a few items, and I'll turn it over to the Executive Director, Mr. Frandl.
Thank you, Chair. First action item is approval of a joint powers agreement between the city and Northeastern Intermediate School District 916 to continue the student home projects for the 2021-2022 school year at 2487 19th Avenue.
Okay. Any question in regards to the joint powers agreement for, what's your title?
Executive Director.
Executive Director,
Sounds really important.
Randall. Any questions for Brian? If not, the motion is for the building construction joint powers agreement.
So
Moved by
I'll second.
Member Peterson, second by Member Thorson. Any discussion? Not all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the motion carries. Executive Director Frandl.
Thanks, Chair. Second action item B is revised plan for student-built home discussion.
All right, now we get to the nuts and bolts of the meeting. Welcome again, and
Yes, good to see everyone
back-
again.
we're back at it, and
Right, and so 2 weeks ago, I was here, and there was a plan that was preliminary drawn for that lot, and it had a hard time fitting on that lot, and I always look at multiple facets. First of all, the house has to fit in the neighborhood. Second, the house has to fit on the lot, and third, the house has to sit in the financial budget plan. And so after we've looked at that plan, it needed a lot of modifications. So I reached out to the original architect, Leah Johnson, about the plan changes and other options. And I also went to her website. So I reached out to her on July 9th. On July 12th, she sent me another variation of a plan that I thought would really fit well into this property. Smaller plan. It was like 1,300 roughly square feet. And it was a plan that she had on her website, a stock plan. So it needed some other modifications to make it fit onto that property. Then she actually sent me another plan that she said this is even more streamlined. And so I'm thinking streamlined, bring that cost down as much as possible, fits the neighborhood, all that good stuff. And so we had discussions on the 13th of July, preferring that plan that she sent me with the changes. And I believe you did receive that plan and the changes?
we have plans in our,
Well, we got the changes, but the plan is the same plan. It's a third, there's a third stall still on the plan.
Correct, correct.
So that plan is the original plan. It's not the modified.
Right. And so yesterday I sent her a follow-up email checking on the progress of where she's at. And then today she sent me a reply and she said she's about 2 weeks out. They're making these revisions. And then she said that the rough cost she charges about $1 a square foot. And so, you know, it's finished basement and main floor, so it'd be about $2,600. And she would need a half, about $1,300 to get started. And I found that out today. You know, my experience with this is, it seems a little bit high, to be honest with you. So I don't know if you're looking for recommendations or if you want to talk about this or where we want to go from here.
so it's just the update in the plan is what you're.
Correct. Yeah, because we can't really use her plan, then we can have copyright issues,
Right.
you know, the one she has on her website and such.
And we don't have really any other options right now, so this is what we're,
Well, I did send out a couple emails to some of the builders I know, Housing First Minnesota and another one, asking them, hey, do you by chance happen to have a 1,400 square foot Rambler plan we could use real quick? Haven't heard back, but you know, they're probably busy today as well. So I'd almost like to wait a few days to see if something materializes from that conversation, and then, not jump at the gun today on it. Maybe by the end of the week, if we don't have another plan in place to move forward with a, set of building plans, we'll probably have to go this option. And it's not, I think I had $2,500 in the budget for a plan, and this is 26, pretty close.
Yep.
And so we did, or I did, put it as a budget item issue. Obviously, we had to buy plans or get something drawn. So that's where we're at with the plans right now.
Tom, I'm okay with it to move ahead.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Councilmember Thor.
So, you had mentioned previously maybe a way to help save some costs is to not finish the basement.
Mm-hmm.
Is
Correct.
that something that would help reduce the cost of that if the basement's not, or is it just saying the overall footprint that is adding to that 2,600?
That's a good point. I mean, maybe we can have her draw it without a finished basement. Make some notes here myself.
And I guess my other question was, so, I mean, it seems like making a modification to an existing plan would be ideal. So if we were to go out and hire a different outfit, how much do you anticipate that might cost? But it sounds like you're waiting to hear back from those, so you.
Yeah, I mean, she's charging roughly $1 a square foot. That's, probably at or below the going rate right now. And so I'm not really balking at her price too much. Just said I'm trying to get it for free, is what it boils down to from my contacts in the building
Thank you.
industry.
You get the house for free, too.
Yeah, it just so happens I provide, roughly 90 students a year into their industry. And so I
Yeah.
was hoping that there would be some repercussion there.
So I guess, if we can hear back from your other people and they say, yeah, we can do something, I would say let's move forward with that route, obviously, especially if they're not gonna do it at any cost. But being is that we're, September's gonna be here in a blink of an eye.
Right.
And I guess my only concern is that, there was a variance already granted for this existing plan, I believe. And I'm hoping that whatever we do, we can just modify it and make it fit into the lot existing. No need to acquire additional land, no need to, because we did that as well. And no need to do a variance, just make it fit within the existing lot. And it sounds like that's your goal?
Well, my goal would be to make it, because did the city purchase that property already?
Yep.
At 5 feet? And that's, that really helps out a lot due to the setbacks we're trying to get. Are you referencing the impervious area of that property?
Yeah, maybe Ronnie can.
Yeah. This should actually fit in there, no problem with that, what's already been okayed with the variance and all that, from what I have read and what I have seen. So I think we should be fine with that.
Yeah, so because their variance has already been approved, I believe it's good for a year. And if we don't need it, it just expires, from my understanding. But again, if the goal is to just work within the parameters of the existing lot and kind of downsize it for various reasons to make it fit in with the neighborhood, budgetary-wise, I think that would be ideal. But it seems like the current plans that we do have, that we obviously paid for, that will work because we have that additional 5 feet that we bought from the neighbor and then a variance in place right now. So I wasn't sure if maybe you're aware of that or not, but.
Yeah, except that house plan was a little bit over the top.
Yeah, it's the budgetary.
Yeah. Meets 2 of the 3 requirements.
Okay.
Well, I don't even know if it fits in the neighborhood that well. I mean, just giving, you can change the front, to tone it down a little bit. But I just don't want to be that house on the block that stands out too much. I want it to fit in that neighborhood as much as possible. That's why I'm kind of recommending we go to, a downscaled version, streamlined version of that plan.
Great.
But the question is if you want a basement or not.
So,
finished basement.
A finished basement.
That's.
That does add cost to the home. A lot of that cost, with the new energy codes and stuff, we have to really insulate that basement whether you finish it or not. I mean, that's just part of the new energy codes we deal with. Then we're looking at, electrical, finishing that bathroom, some plumbing issues. Depending on what well, I guess I have the plan in front of me as far as that lower level goes, finishing it. But I would just, top of my head, just kind of estimated, probably close to, $30,000 finishing that basement, something on that price range. That would drop that cost. Possibly could wait to see what the budget comes out to be and then decide if we want to finish that lower level or not, see where we come in. Some people like that lower level ready to move in, others want to do it themselves. So you're kind of splitting hairs on that one. Depends on the buying market at the time.
I think if we had that option, that'd be good. Have that option if.
Okay, so we'll just note on the plan, future basement finish or something like that.
Mhm.
And then if we decide to go ahead with it, and we can probably make that decision during the construction process. And it's no different than if you build a house and all of a sudden it's sold and somebody wants the basement finished, you're not gonna not finish it. You're gonna go ahead and finish it for them. And as far as scheduling goes, I've been in contact with St. Paul College, and they said if they need to come in and help us, finish the basement, be an example of that, they'd be more than happy to come in and do that.
Oh, good,
So I've got a backup to the backup plan here.
good, very good.
All right, so I will follow up with the architect and look at that no finish in the lower level and see if that will affect the price of the drawing fees. And then I'll wait, maybe send another reminder email to the people I sent emails to about, do you have a stock plan that we could, maybe borrow?
You want us to set a number for you at all for the plan, or do you feel comfortable? I have a lot of faith in you. So, if it's $100 or $500 or whatever,
Yeah, I think what
I hate to have you not do it because, I got to go back to the council or the HRA to find out if that's acceptable or not. I
Yeah.
want to kind of give you more leeway and.
Oh, yeah. The email, and this just came today, so it could not get in your docket requirement by Thursday, I believe. Everything has to be submitted to city or HRA council by Thursday for you to receive. So this came from me today. And she said a positive half of the estimated cost gets the project started. The cost of the project is $1 per square foot. So far, this project, the deposit will be roughly $1,300. The final amount, which is due when the design is approved and in the budget you require. The balance is determined after we land on exact square footage. So if we make the house bigger, do some other things, then she'll add on to that $1 per square foot fee.
I'll leave it to your discretion unless council thinks anything else.
Okay, well, we'll look at, having her, I plan on not telling her, let's go ahead and draw this until I exhaust some of those other resources that
Okay.
are available to me. And then once she can kind of, about 1,300 square foot, might be 1,350, so I'll bring the price up to about $2,700. So it's going to be around, 2,600, 2,700, depending on the exact square footage.
I'm okay with that.
So we pre-approve them for that, but if you can get it down or use your resources who may
Right.
potentially do it for free, then that way you're not waiting or need to come back to
Right.
us, right?
Okay,
So you have that discretion.
appreciate it, thank you. All right, do you have any other further questions about the plan? Okay. The other item that I mentioned 2 weeks ago on the 6th of July, was that the last?
How time flies when we're
Yeah.
having fun.
Is reaching out to Carl Sanderson about that structural imaging. And they have not gotten back to me. So I just want to, I did look into it, did some other things, but they haven't gotten back to me on that either.
Are they that busy? Or
Everybody's really busy right now. Labor shortage, interest rates low, lumber prices are starting to drop. I can see it getting worse as we move into the fall.
so fish finder, you can't use it to look to see if there's a crack or something?
I've got a Markham 3, but I don't think it doesn't even find fish for me, so.
I don't know, it's just based on, that, how close it is to that house, and we're gonna be doing a lot of excavating. I think it might be important for us to have that.
Or at least reach out to that person and see if she has any record of anything, and maybe they've done some home inspections, I'm not sure what the.
Would Minspec, would our Minspec be able to do anything, help us on that?
I can certainly talk to them. There are different levels of that as well. I mean, you can go as far as you want with imaging equipment. You can actually do just a walkthrough of the home, like a before and an after. There are different levels of it to look into, but I can certainly make contact with Minspec about that.
Tom, do you think that would kind of suffice if we had, someone go over there and inspect the foundation or
Some
inspect the walls and
documentation. Right, some
taking
documentation.
pictures and all that, just to have documentation, that might be enough to, for the short term, I guess. Yeah, council or commission member, whoever you are.
She's gonna be on top of it,
Right,
So we want to be correct.
right. So if we could get Minspec to take a peek at it, and then it's based on who's gonna do the excavation too, we gotta talk about that too.
Correct.
And I think that's the next topic.
I believe so. You have any further questions for me on the house plans or moving forward? We'll do the best we can. It's like being a high school teacher. Wait, I am one. Or
Yeah, I was gonna say, aren't you a teacher?
I get 3 months off once in a while, so.
Good.
Well, thank you for your time. I appreciate it.
Anything else? Okay, good. Thank you. So that brings us to the excavation and demolition and all that. I don't know if, Ron, if you want to take the lead on that?
Yeah, in your packet, you should have gotten 4 different estimates. One of them was from the city, that we put together some numbers. Randy and I worked with Kyle on just getting some numbers together. So, the equipment costs that you see in here are basically per our, what's our
It's like a disaster, it's in our fee schedule.
Yes, it's in our fee schedules. So in our city fee schedules, thank
If we
you.
were to go do mutual aid from
Yep.
Maplewood, if a tornado went.
This
through,
is what
we'd
we'd charge for a
It's
truck.
FEMA reimbursement. I think.
Yep. This is what we'd charge for a truck, what we'd charge for a backhoe, what we'd charge for any of that. So that's what you can see in where our numbers came up with. That's a rate per hour, and then we guesstimated what we'd have in for hours in there for that. So what we're basically gonna look at with all the different, the quotes that we got are basically the tear down of the house, disconnect of water and sewer, and then reconnect of water and sewer. They're not all real clear on how they estimated it. They basically were given the same information. So the city of North St. Paul, we would be at about 16.8 for those 3 items: the tear down of the house, disconnect water, sewer, and then reconnect it. If you look at DSM excavating, for them to do those 3 things, they would be about 15.4, and then Semple would be around 12.6 for that. But they don't have a reconnect fee on here. It was basically to take the water and sewer cut off at the property. And then Midstate, in their bid for those 3 things, it'd be at about 12.3. So they were the lowest bid out of the 3 that we have. So I know that Councilmember Thorson had asked, for what it would cost for the city to do this. This is rough numbers. There's a lot more info in here. We put in to dig in the basement, backfill, different things like that. So we can definitely, open for discussion on this and what your guys' thoughts are. And
Have you worked with any of these folks, or they're?
Yes, DSM, Tom has worked with those. That was one.
I saw the art name, but that sounds familiar.
Yep, so that was one of the guys companies he reached out to. Semple has done they've moved houses and they have done some work in town. I personally haven't worked with them. Midstate, they are who has done the project downtown. They have done multiple projects in town. They're good people to work with from what I've worked with them. So but this is kind of where we're at, and, you know, definitely open for discussion on how we want to look at doing this, and
I've got a quick question. So if you look at the bids, you know, the city of North St. Paul, definitely we have fixed costs that are there. And that would be, I'd assume, the labor and probably the machinery too, because that's our equipment, that's
Yep.
what if we're not using it, you know, it's just sitting idle. And then the labor, if we have time to do it, and that's totally up to you guys in regards to if we have the time, and, you know, that's labor that, if you're not doing that, you're mowing the lawns or working on something. So does it make sense to take those out of the contract? And to me, it kind of makes sense to take that out to price it.
to take our, like, truck prices out and hours and.
It's all those fixed costs that we're normally gonna be doing stuff in the city anyhow. And I don't know what the council thinks about that, but, you know, if we're not tearing that down, we're doing something else. And if we have the manpower at that time to do it,
And it definitely comes down to timing, you know, on a day-to-day basis. You know, we could definitely, you know, if we were gonna tear this house down and we were trying to hit a tight schedule on this, you know, we could have a water main break, we could have a storm, we could have something come in. Normally, the day-to-day, the schedule that I make, very rare do we stick to it. There's usually something that comes up, something that, you know, happens that we have to kind of veer off and do something different.
you're kind of like a doctor. Something can come up.
Yeah, it's, I mean, it's just what it is. You know, we've done this before. It's not like we don't have, we have the people that can do it. And it really comes down to time. It comes down to, you know, what your guys' thoughts are of, you know, the city doing that. I know there's mixed reactions on that. But it definitely is something, you know, if we're gonna do it in September or, you know, the end of August, you know, it's a busy time of the year for us. There's always something going. There's vacations, there's, you know, different things going on with that. I understand what you're saying. I mean, you look at this stuff and, hey, we're here, we're getting paid, you know, they're paying the public works guys either way. That we have the equipment, but it comes down to, if we do this, we figured 4 guys to do this 3 days. It's, you know, for that, if 1 guy or 2 guys are gone right now, we stop doing something that, you know, blacktopping or tree trimming, or, I mean, we stop that for those days. Now, not doing those for 3 days, is that gonna, you know, break us or wreck our whole schedule? It won't. It's just what you guys are comfortable with us doing.
Right.
So-
And that's just it. What are we comfortable with? What are you comfortable with? You know, what's our missed opportunity if we allow you to do this? Are we missing something else? So,
I can't honestly say, hey, if we do this, we gotta quit blacktopping for the rest of the year, we're not gonna trim any more trees. It's nothing like that, but it's what you guys are comfortable with this. You know, we'll make it work. We're used to that. We're used to kinda, you know, doing whatever we have to do.
I guess what is that number if we take those items out?
Basically, you'd be down to the 2,500, just for tipping fees.
Yep,
$2,500?
yep. It would be for the disposal, and if you wanna figure fuel in there, you know, in that cost for, you know, trucking the stuff out.
Right. Commissioners?
So, I mean, I get where you're coming from, Mayor, but, you know, to get an apples to apples comparison to these other bids, you can't just say, well, we're gonna be out driving the dump truck anyway, so let's just take that out. Well, then, what's the point of ever getting a bid? I mean, we could always come in under, or we could make the numbers work wherever. The intent here was to say, what would it cost us to do if we were operating like a private contractor, and what does that compare to others? And then it becomes a question of what are our opportunity costs? And, you know, like, just like the police department was discussing, they're stretched thin. You know, Public Works, from my understanding, is kind of always facing that too throughout the summer depending on how much summer help you have and people's vacation schedule. You know, this thing that we're in here is not an essential city service, in my opinion. What we hired public works employees to do is to provide essential city services. That's servicing the sewers, the parks, our forestry department doing forestry, the streets. And that's going to take a back seat if they're doing this, no doubt about it. If you guys are sitting around twiddling your thumbs looking for something to do, I think that'd be the no-brainer thing. Well, we'll do it, we'll save ourselves, what, $10,000 to $12,000. And, you know, this is also something that, yes, we can do, but this isn't what we're experts in, right? These people, this is what they specialize in. And so, you know, I don't think we can just ignore the certain charges to justify us doing it. I think, you know, this is clear that we're in the ballpark, but, you know, with our growing rates and everything, we're obviously a little higher. Yes, you can take those charges out and then we're under, but I think, to me, it seems like the responsible thing to do would be to engage with one of these contractors and have them do it, knowing that if something comes up, we can always step in and do it. And in so doing, we will save some money because we're actually not going to bill ourselves for this stuff. But, you know, to me, the priority of what Public Works is supposed to be doing takes precedent over something like this, in my opinion.
Councilmember, or Commissioner Peterson.
I agree with Councilman Thorson. We can add this to the sale of the home. I know it'll be later on, but I mean, we can recoup this excavating, right? I mean, we got to come up with it originally, but I don't know how it works. But I just think our guys are stretched thin. I mean, I see them working all the time, and I just don't think they have the time to do it. And I think our other services are more important. And they can get it done more efficiently, not that you couldn't, but you got other things to do. And that's how I feel about it. I know it's money, you know, I don't like to spend money, but I think in this circumstance, I can validate it. Thank you.
Councilmember Wong? Commissioner Wong?
Yeah, again, I think it goes back to the capacity. I hear Commissioner Thorson in regards to, yes, we have essential services that need to be taken care of. So I guess my question from a more of a logistical standpoint is, if you have 4 guys on site, how many other people on site, then how many other folks are out and, you know, doing, you know, the essential services? I guess my question is, do you think you have the capacity for 3 days?
Like I said, we always make it work. We're kind of used to doing that and figuring stuff out. But just so you know, we have 9 guys at Public Works. So that would, you know, close to half our staff for 3 days. And they would have to be all full-time guys. It couldn't be any of the summertime help. Probably by that time, we'll be losing most of our summer help. So, you know, in that time frame where if we have summer help out helping mow, you know, to help do stuff, it'll take full-time guys to do that. Summertime help takes care of all the trash, you know, all summer long. And in September, we're still doing trash, so full-time guys have to do that. So for those 3 days, you know, we're probably stopping 2, you know, services that we would do. Blacktopping and probably tree trimming is what we would stop. Depending on where we are in the sewer cleaning for the year, you know, we have to get through at least 1/3 of the city each summer. So that's something that we stay on task and make sure that we do. But that's just, you know, kind of the reality of it. And that's saying that we have the full crew here. A lot of the guys in the summertime, they take their vacations in the summer because we need everybody here in the winter for plowing. So the guys are usually really good about getting their time used up or, you know, using their vacation before the snow starts to fly. So when we start getting closer to snow season, guys start using their time, and, you know, we expect a lot out of them in the winter time because we need everyone here to do it. We can be down one guy and, you know, but someone has to cover that person's route for that. So it's like I said, we always, if, you guys decided, hey, we want you to do it because this is, we have the stuff, you can do it, it's 3 days of our lives, that's fine. I mean, we can make that work. I would never tell you absolutely not, but I'm just kind of laying out what's there, and yeah, so it'd be half our staff. That was kind of a long answer.
That's a very long.
Sorry.
Could you repeat that again?
Yeah.
Hanging around.
I'd probably say it all
Morgan
wrong.
Dolly too much. I think Morgan, yeah.
Sorry.
Commissioner Cole.
Pretty much along the same line as everyone else. Ron, if you got the time to do it, awesome. If it's going to take away from something else, we outsource it, and that's, kind of the way I'm looking at it.
Okay.
So I guess it's up to you if you're,
What's that?
The hard part be just scheduling right now.
yeah.
Yeah.
I have to let a contractor know soon, have the tight schedule.
Yeah.
So having a contractor, you'd be more specific on timing. Tom, I think that might help you more, if they have a contractor coming in and working on it rather than you guys, if you do get caught.
It probably would help my schedule somewhat, but given the delay in plans that we're currently experiencing, we're looking at realistically 3 weeks out before we get a set of working plans that we can submit for permit, which is kind of pushing our start date farther into like mid-September. And so that would actually probably give, not that I want to sway anybody here, but probably give Public Works almost like 2 weeks timeframe to demo that house. I don't think they would need to bring fill in to backfill a hole. I'm not sure what the safety protocol is there to put a snow fence or some barricades of some sort. And then do the sewer disconnect and then let it sit until someone comes in and does the excavation.
So you're thinking the City Works could do it under a longer time frame. It wouldn't have to be 3 days. It could be,
Yeah, it's gonna take them 3 days to do it, but, they don't have to specify 3 specific calendar days. They'll have some flexibility in probably a 2-week window to fit in 3 days.
Ideally, we need 3 rain days.
I'm right back where I was.
back where you are.
That's fine. And like I said, I have no problem. And we can go, I guess what I'm hearing is, hey, if it works in our schedule, if this works out, we should do it. If I deem that it doesn't, you guys don't have a problem in taking this lowest bidder to do this.
Yep. Yep.
All right? That's fine with me. I'm happy with that. That's bad sometimes.
So what is your decision? I mean, is it based on, do you think you have time in the next? Really? I think that's kind of what we're looking for, clarity of.
Let's hope for rain.
Yeah, like I said, I guess the way that I'm looking at it, I'll talk to the lowest bid contractor, see, hey, how much of a lead time do I need to give you on this? We'll see how things lay out here, the house plan. The big thing is gonna be, if we can demo the house and leave the hole open, dig the hole, haul stuff out for the demo, leave the hole open, adjust the hole to the size that it needs to be for the foundation, backfill it, and the days that I gave you, the 3 days, that's demoing the house, hauling the stuff out, maybe sizing the hole, but then we gotta come back, we gotta backfill, we'll have to backfill once the foundation's put in. So, it's gonna be more than 3 days that we'll have up there working on it. What's that?
4 days on there.
Oh, do we have 4 days figured on it? Okay. So what I guess my answer to you is that we'll see how things play out here. And if I deem we have time to do it, we'll do that and we'll demo it. And if I don't, it's okay for me to use the lowest bid contractor, correct?
Yep. Unless So Tom, you've worked with Midstate. Have you worked with Midstate?
I've worked with, we've.
Oh, you've worked with Midstate.
Yeah. They're doing, they're the contractor that got the downtown project.
Because it looks like Simple and Midstate are pretty close to the same.
Yes, but Semple's, I think you'd have to add.
Simple.
Yeah, I think you'd have to add a water hookup.
No reconnect.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they don't have a reconnect on here.
So we'll leave it up to you.
Yeah,
Lowest bid, I guess.
okay. And we'll do it if we have, we have the time to do it. And if something turns out that it doesn't, I can have them on backup.
And then we want to work with, what do you call it, for the neighbors. Get an inspection in there.
Inspect.
Inspect. We should do that fairly soon, coordinate. Okay. Anything else?
I'm afraid.
All right. Director Frandl, anything else on HRA? All right. If not, motion to adjourn.
Moved.
Moved by Commissioner Thorson,
Second.
second by Commissioner Cole. Any discussion? If not, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Oppose? We are adjourned.